Chapter 1732. When Chimey had evolved into the flowing cloud azure bird, it had belonged to the blue sparrow/feathered wing species. Therefore, Chimey was called the flowing cloud azure bird because its feathers were green. Morbius had chosen to use the color of its feathers to name fays that had never appeared in the world before. Lu Yifun's peach sky azure bird was a blue bird's main species/desolate fay. Normally, when fays were divided into classes, they would follow the main class. This meant that there was only one type of fay in this class. Therefore, it could be determined that the peach sky azure bird's fay was named according to its bloodline. And he had said that his senior brother's defense support could be picked up in one go. Lin Yuan did not need to look at Lu Yifun's other fays and sacred source life forms. Just this peach sky azure bird alone was enough for him to be certain. And his words were not false. The peach sky azure bird's normal ability, falling flowers, was a flexible and versatile defensive ability. Especially on a target when there were 10 layers of petals, there would be a small peach sky azure bird guarding at the side. It was the most flexible and comprehensive defensive ability that Lin Yuan had seen among all the defensive abilities. The heartless and affectionate abilities looked rather complicated in the data introduction. However, in fact, it was an ability to heal the target's injuries and restore spiritual power. With these two abilities, Lu Yifun, a support-type spirit chi professional, could take on the responsibilities of a healing-type spirit chi professional. To a certain extent, he could take on the responsibilities of a healing-type spirit chi professional and a support-type spirit chi professional. Peach Demon Transformation was a type of group control. The strangulation ability was targeted at relatively weaker fays. The peach roots could kill these weaker fays in a large area through the strangulation ability. The peach sky azure bird's peach demon transformation was able to suppress the insect swarms summoned by Lin Yuan's red thorn and Lu Jie's insect queen. The platinum ability biting jade feeding could be defined as a strategic defensive ability. It allowed the target to enter an invincible state, and it was not as simple as just blocking damage for the target. Some phase abilities and exclusive skills had certain special effects and curses. When these abilities landed on the target, they would cause a great impact on the target. The reason why Zhongzhe was cursed was because he didn't have such a defensive ability. If the heavenly peach bird had been there to feed Zhongzhe with the biting jade skill, Zhongzhe could effectively resist the curse. For example, peach sky bluebird's gold rank skill, peach demonization, had a strangling effect. It could also be used for defense. The jade locking feeding skill mentioned that as long as the opponent's strength did not exceed the heavenly peach bluebird by a large level, it would not be nullified. What was the concept of a big level? At this moment, the heavenly peach bluebird's strength was at the peak of suzerain level 10 myth 2. If it was a grade higher, it would only be the attack of a monarch fae. Only then would he be able to escape from the effects of jadeite feeding. When the fae reached monarch grade, its strength would be at the creation breed level. In other words, the heavenly peach green bird could protect the target with its biting jade rock hurl skill. It could protect the target to the extent that it was invulnerable to anyone below the creator seed level. Previously, when Lu Yifun first appeared and ascended the seven-colored stone pillar, Lin Yuan saw Lu Yifun's other main fay, the Yin-Yang dual bull. The Yin-Yang twin bull's strength was also at the peak of Diamond X/Myth 2. The Freedom Federation and the Radiance Federation had always been the strongest opponents in the Myriad Nations Convention. Therefore, based on Lu Yifun's strength, Lin Yuan could roughly infer Qian Yu's strength. Qian Yu's fay must also be at the peak of Suzerain/Myth 2. After examining Lu Yifun's fay, Lin Yuan understood where his future goal was. Lu Yifun was still an A-rank spirit chi professional. Before a spirit chi professional could reach S rank, the strength of a fay at the peak of Myth 2 was already the limit. Otherwise, as a Radiance envoy, Lu Yifun wanted to upgrade a Myth 2 fay to Myth 3. He only needed a few law crystals. There was no reason not to upgrade it. As for the heavenly peach bluebird's Diamond Street ability and suzerain ability, in Lin Yuan's opinion, there should be a certain relationship. According to the introduction of the suzerain ability, Elite Guard Return Lin Yuan knew. Lu Yifun's peach bluebird had devoured the soul of the Elite Guard, which was also a desolate bloodline fay. The heavenly peach bluebird was a wood-type fay, but it had a water-type ability at Diamond. It did not conform to the evolution law of fays. Therefore, the appearance of this ability should be related to the desolate bloodline fay, the Elite Guard. However, Lin Yuan did not know what had happened and why the heavenly peach bluebird had devoured the elite guard's soul. Lin Yuan did not know. The diamond's skill ocean protection was too focused. It wasn't all-encompassing. In Lin Yuan's opinion, the heavenly peach bluebird was at a disadvantage. The suzerain ability, Elite Guard Return, allowed the heavenly peach bluebird to summon the elite guard. It was different from the heavenly peach bluebird, which was a defense-type desolate bloodline fae. The elite guard was a power offense-type desolate bloodline fae and had extremely strong offensive power. This ability allowed the heavenly peach bluebird to have a certain level of insight in its attacks. The summoned elite guard continuously used the Flame Emperor's will skill. The Flame Emperor Mind's ability increased the strength of fire-type phase on one side and burned the enemy. It was very compatible with Zhou Xian's Burning Sky Roar. As for the exclusive skill Peach Branch Sky, it fundamentally increased the heavenly peach bluebird's defense. The heavenly peach bluebird's defense mainly came from the peach blossoms that fell from the peach forest. Only when the peach blossoms were stacked 10 times would the small heavenly peach bluebird be guarding by the side. The peach blossoms on the green peach trees were very easy to be attacked by the enemy. The exclusive skill Peach Branch Sky had the effect of doubling the defense before the peach blossoms bore fruit. It could guarantee that even if the enemy targeted the peach blossoms, it would be very difficult to destroy them. After all, peach trees bloomed first before bearing fruit. The exclusive skill Green Peach Endowment was a kind of endurance ability. It allowed the heavenly peach bluebird of the desolate bloodline to protect multiple targets at the same time. It could also increase the strength of the defense while ensuring mobility. As for the exclusive skill Body Transformation, no matter how one looked at it, it was very similar to the exclusive skill Specialization. But in essence, the exclusive skill Body Transformation was of a higher grade than Tool Transformation. Tool Transformation was a fae that would randomly turn into an artifact for the Spirit Chi professional to use. Body Transformation could not only be used on other people. At the same time, it could also find the corresponding shortcomings based on other people's characteristics. It could turn into a weapon based on the shortcomings. It could make up for the shortcomings of the target. It was the same as customizing a weapon that would be of great help to the target. This was not the end. The heavenly peach bluebird could also lend its spiritual power to the target. It was the same as turning into a powerful spiritual power battery in battle. Before Lin Yuan could continue marveling at Lu Yifan's heavenly peach bluebird of the desolate peach bluebird, Lu Yifan had already summoned his sacred source life form. 7017K. Chapter 1733. It was a tall lady covered in a black robe, revealing only half of her face. She appeared beside Lu Yifan. Lin Yuan was now 1.8 meters tall and was about to reach 1.8 meters. Lu Yifan was 1.82 meters tall, which was about the same height as Lin Yuan. Lu Jia was the tallest person present. He was 1.87 meters tall. However, compared to this lady who hid her entire body in the robe, Lu Jia could only be considered a dwarf. He was at least 2.4 meters tall and her entire body was shrouded in a black robe. Her upper body was as thin as an electric pole. Her lower body was abnormally bloated. This made the lady's body look very strange under the black robe. Generally speaking, people wore black robes to keep a low profile. This lady's black robe was inlaid with gems, making her look exceptionally luxurious. At that moment, the lady reached out and pulled the black robe off her head. Her black hair hung just above the dividing line between her fat and skinny body. Lin Yuan heard the lady speak in a soft voice. "Master, Lulu wants to eat gems." Lu Yifan hurriedly took out dozens of gems and tossed them to the sacred source life form who called herself Lulu. Lulu happily caught the gems that Lu Yifan tossed over. Then he tugged at the black robe beneath him, revealing an extremely gorgeous throne. This throne was inlaid with 3 types of gems. They were emerald, topaz, and purple agate. These 3 types of gems were earth-type spiritual ingredients. They were produced in the origin world. They could only be used when concocting spirit liquids of grade 3 and above. Lin Yuan took a closer look at the chair and found that there were actually 3 mouths growing on it. The 3 mouths on the throne were extremely similar to the lady's. However, the 3 mouths on the throne were dozens of times larger than the lady's. Lulu was currently stuffing the gems into the 3 mouths. She filled the 3 mouths with emerald, topaz, and purple agate. The emerald, topaz and purple agate entered the three mouths respectively. Then the three mouths emitted chewing sounds that made one's teeth ache. As the three mouths chewed, Lulu's face revealed a satisfied expression. Lin Yuan immediately knew that the humanoid sacred source life form was a foodie just like Princess. However, compared to the Princess Lulu, this little foodie was definitely more frugal. Princess usually consumed law crystals, world crystals, law origin crystals and world origin crystals. Even the cheapest law origin crystal, which was easily obtainable, was much more expensive than emerald, topaz and purple agate. Therefore Lin Yuan had always felt that, no matter how edible the sacred source life form was, Princess would always be the benchmark in the world of gluttons. No one knew when the three mouths stopped chewing. The sacred source life form called Lulu spat out 3 small baskets from its 3 mouths. The 3 small baskets were filled with 3 types of specially processed gems. Lu Yifan threw a few dozen gems to Lulu and said, "My sacred source life form is called the Gem Witch. The current sacred source star is 7 stars, and the sacred source star is Earth. It's a defense-type sacred source life form." Lu Yifan then looked at Zhongzhe, Lu Jia and Black. "My position in the team is a defense-type spirit chi professional, and I will coordinate with the support function. My offensive ability is not too strong. Therefore when we fight later the 3 of you will be the main attackers. I don't think I have time to show you my main phase, the yin-yang 2 directions ox and the 4 symbols 8 trigrams deer. These 2 phase abilities are defense and support at the same time. They can be used with my desolate bloodline Fae, the peach sky green bird. I will use them during the battle as I see fit." Lu Yifan's words could be said to be extremely candid. He analyzed his strengths and weaknesses. There were 10 minutes left before the end of the 30-minute battle meeting. During these 10 minutes, Lu Yifan said that he would not summon the yin-yang 2 directions ox and the 4 symbols 8 trigrams deer. This meant that Lu Yifan planned to use the rest of the time to introduce the sacred source life forms, the Gem Witch. Lin Yuan had Morbius true data, so he did not need Lu Yifan's introduction. He could accurately understand the Gem Witch's 3 functions as a 7-star sacred source life form. Sacred source name, Gem Witch, sacred source species, source family / sacred source species, sacred source star class, 7 stars, sacred source type. Earth functions frowny face protection of the emerald. The witch takes out an emerald gemstone from the gemstone basket in her hand and throws it on the target. When the target is attacked, the damage will be turned into a shield under the effect of the emerald to protect the target. Topaz's guidance. The witch takes out an emerald gemstone from the gemstone basket and throws it on the target. When the target is attacked, the emerald gemstone will transform into a shield to protect the target. Purple agate reshaping. The witch takes out a purple agate stone from the gemstone basket in her hand and throws it on the target's body. When the target's body is injured, the purple agate stone will change its shape and temporarily replace the injured part of the target's body. The reshaped part will also have the same defensive strength as the purple agate stone. Lin Yuan rejoiced when he saw it. He knew Zhongzhe, Lu Jia and Gaofeng very well. The 3 of them were all outstanding spirit chi professionals in their respective fields. Lu Jia was good at positional warfare and group combat. Zhongzhe specialized in single target and group attacks. Gao Feng specialized in support. Lin Yuan had been developing in an all-round way, but compared to offense, healing and support, Lin Yuan was much stronger. Defense had always been his weakest aspect. Lin Yuan's defense mainly relied on the princess immunity to elemental energy. Genius buffered and reflected mental attacks, while the Source Sand's highly effective Guardian Sand blocked physical attacks. These 3 abilities had forged Lin Yuan into an iron bucket. However, if Lin Yuan wanted to help his teammates defend, he could only use the Source Sand. When facing the alien beast tide, the Source Sand was like a god that could protect any teammate that Lin Yuan wanted to protect. However, in the battle that was about to take place, the Source Sand would not be able to unleash such powerful abilities. Due to Han Chi's Fae, the floating earth serpent, the Source Sand was firmly suppressed. He could only rely on the samurai guard to fight. Moreover, every time the floating world bright serpent used its skill Earth Reset, it would activate the skill. The Source Sand would be scattered. It took about half a minute for them to gather together. Therefore he had been worried that his side would have enough offense but not enough defense. 7017K. Chapter 1734. However, the addition of Lu Yifan, the third Radiance Envoy, made up for this. He gave the team the most advantageous protection. Lin Yuan's confidence in Lu Yifan wasn't just because of Lu Yifan's title as the third Radiance Envoy. It wasn't just because of Lu Yifan's desolate bloodline Fei, the peach sky azure bird. It was because of Lu Yifan's sacred source life form, the Gem Witch. As a Class 7 sacred source life form, the Gem Witch had three functions. The first function, Emerald's protection, allowed the Gem Witch to exert an unimaginable defensive effect on her own unit. The sacred source life form's ability could be said to be equivalent to the truth. According to Morbius' introduction of the Gem Witch's ability, Emerald's protection. When facing any attack, the Gem Witch's emeralds could absorb the target's damage in the process of defending against the attack. It formed a shield to protect the target. The emerald's ability to absorb attack power was definitely limited. It would continue to strengthen as the Gem Witch's star rank increased. However, when they collided with the Freedom Federation's envoys, only Qianyu, who was also a Freedom Envoy, could match Lu Yifan's target. In other words, as long as the Gem Witch threw the emeralds it could absolutely block the target's attack. As for the second ability, Topaz's Guidance, it had an ability that was impossible to appear among Fey abilities and exclusive skills. This ability allowed him to accurately judge the target. It could determine if the target was in an unreal state. Unreal states could be divided into many situations. For example, bewitchment and illusion techniques could cause people to enter an unreal state. As for the Gem Witch's second ability, Topaz's Guidance, it could make the target who was charmed or under illusion make the best choice even in an unreal state. This ability was very useful in a team. It could effectively prevent a situation of 4 against 6. In Lin Yuan's opinion, the Purple Agate's reconstruction was an extremely heroic ability. For example, during the Radiance 100 sequence selection process. When facing the alien insects, some candidates' hands or legs were blown off and could not move. If the Gem Witch threw a purple agate at such a candidate, this purple agate would fuse into the target's flesh and blood. A new body made of purple agate would fill the target's incomplete body. Let the target continue to fight in a complete state. Furthermore, the body that was strengthened by the purple agate would have a stronger defense than the original body. This skill could be considered a godly skill in a battle of life and death. However, it had no effect on battles on the star web. After all, there was no fear of death in a battle on star web, let alone injuries. However, in the upcoming battle, the Gem Witch's ability to reshape purple agate was bound to play an excellent role. Lin Yuan's Jasmine Lily had the exclusive skill Severed Growth. Even if the target's body was damaged, it could still connect to the target's genetic model and allow the target's body to regrow. The Jasmine Lily's exclusive skill, Severance, was much better than the Gem Witch's Purple Agate's reshaping. After all, the Purple Agate's remolding ability lay in replenishment. After the battle, this supplement would disappear. The Jasmine Lily's exclusive skill, Discontinuity, was to use vitality to reconstruct. However, compared to the Gem Witch's ability to reshape purple agate, if the Jasmine Lily wanted to recover a Fey, it would need to consume a lot of vitality energy. It was undoubtedly very easy for the Gem Witch to use the purple crystal to reconstruct a Fey's body. It could be said that through the Freedom Federation's choice, the 5 people who were about to go up on his side formed a perfect combination. Zhongzhe and Lu Jie, as power offense-type spirit chi professionals, were in charge of offense. Lu Yifan, as a defense-type spirit chi professional, was in charge of defense. Gao Feng, as a support-type spirit chi professional, was in charge of support. Lin Yuan planned to resume his old profession and set himself up as a healing-type spirit chi professional. In fact, when Lin Yuan had registered his identity as Black, he had just contracted the Jasmine Lily. Chimey and Genius were not suitable for combat. At that time, Lin Yuan was essentially a healing-type spirit chi professional. However, Lin Yuan's combat ability was now much higher than his healing ability. However, the Jasmine Lily's ability was still there. Could only rely on its normal ability Heal and exclusive skill Severance. It was stronger than most healing-type Feys. Moreover, Lin Yuan's sacred sword also contained the healing-type sword skill he had obtained from the Holy Healing White Deer World's crystal. While he was using Morbius True Data to investigate the Gem Witch's ability, Morbius True Data Lu Yifan had already introduced the Gem Witch's ability to Lu Jie, Zhongzhe and Gao Feng in detail. After understanding Lu Yifan's Desolation Bloodline Fei, the Peach Sky Green Bird and the Gem Witch's abilities, the three of them pondered. At that moment Lu Yifan spoke. Black, Zhongzhe, Lu Jie, the three of you will be the main attackers in the team. Do you have any ideas for the battle later? Under normal circumstances, Lu Yifan would be the Radiance envoy. After taking over the team he could use his identity to command the team. However, Lu Yifan did not do so. Instead he asked Lin Yuan, Zhongzhe and Lu Jie for their opinions. This was because Lu Yifan did not understand Black, Zhongzhe and Lu Jie's phase. Secondly, in a battle, especially a life-and-death battle like this between two sides, they had to ensure that the team had enough offensive power. Otherwise they would not be able to win if they just defended. Therefore, in a 5-member team, the power offense-type Spirit Chi professional would be the one to command the team. It would be more convenient for them to attack. As the leader, Lu Yifan had completely delegated his authority without hesitation. From this short half an hour of contact, Lin Yuan understood what kind of person Lu Yifan was. Since Lu Yifan had asked this, it meant that he wanted to know their opinions. Lin Yuan replied, Lu Jie and I are both good at positional warfare. My source sand and Lu Jie's insect swarm work together. The sea of flowers that we summon can also restrict the opponent to a certain extent. We can also expand the land we control. Therefore, I suggest that we wait until we teleport to the duel area and not move. Spread out the formation on the spot. Lu Jie's black-winged owlet moths and my source sand can be in the sky and on the ground. They can effectively explore the surrounding environment. For the insect swarm, positional warfare only required them to be the center. They did not need to care about which direction the enemy would come from. The insect swarm's mobility was not to be trifled with. Chapter 1735. Even if the fortifications were deployed in the wrong direction from the start, the swarm only needed to move, and within a few seconds, they would be able to set up fortifications in another direction. Hearing Lin Yuan's words, Gao Feng's eyes lit up and said, When my phase, Breeze Hibiscus and Spirit Spring Lily, are in a specific area, the Breeze Hibiscus will use the airflow to help the Spirit Spring Lily recover spirit power. It can increase the speed at which the Spirit Spring Lily gathers spiritual energy. I can do my best to help Lu Jie and Black recover their spirit energy. It will make it easier for the two of them to spread out their formation. Lin Yuan shook his head upon hearing that. He then said to Gao Feng, My spiritual power should be enough for the battle later. You don't have to worry about me. Just do your best to supply the spiritual energy to Lu Jie, Zhongzhe and Lu Yifan. Lin Yuan had already planned to open his Spirit Chi imprint and Life imprint in this battle. Through the battle with Han Qi, Lin Yuan knew that the Freedom Federation had come prepared. Yan Ling, Kai Hua and Yu Changjian were watching the general execution battle from below the general execution platform. The three of them were obviously afraid of the white-haired youth behind them. The other members of the Liberal 100 sequence were also very far away from this white-haired youth. This meant that this white-haired youth definitely had an extraordinary identity. He was definitely a hidden ace of the Freedom Federation. Therefore, in such a battle between the two great federations that was of great significance, there was no need to worry. Lin Yuan was ready to play his trump card according to the situation on the battlefield. Of course, Di Wanmi and the Emperor-class weapons that Red Thorn controlled through the Tongue of Relinquish. Furthermore, Lin Yuan and Bai Lan had fused together to obtain Bai Yen and other trump cards. He would definitely not expose himself. These trump cards were too important. Not only would people discover Red Thorn's abnormality, but they might also discover his uniqueness. It would be fine if these trump cards were exposed in front of the Radiance Federation's lord. However, the Freedom Federation's people were also here. Lin Yuan couldn't possibly reveal his trump cards. The mutation of the Red Thorn's Tongue of Relinquish was due to devouring that strange plant seed and plant. Through the investigation of the whale ocean trade, Lin Yuan knew that everything was related to the tower cannon. It was said that 2 members of the 8 pages had come to Radiance. If he was detected by the people in the tower cannon, it would be equivalent to putting himself in danger. Furthermore, he had summoned an emperor-grade weapon and an expert like Bai Yen. If that happened, then this competition would be meaningless. The two majesties of the Freedom Federation would definitely take action to stop the competition. It was only when he displayed the combat strength that was normal for his age. Only then was he able to kill the 5 young powerhouses of the Freedom Federation's diplomatic mission. This left the 2 leaders of the Freedom Federation speechless. Lin Yuan's words stunned Lu Yifan, Zhongzhe, Lu Jia and Gao Feng. He immediately knew that Lin Yuan definitely had a trump card that could help him recover his spiritual power. During the battle with Zhongzhe in the civil and martial arena, Zhongzhe had discovered Lin Yuan's astonishing spirit chi reserves. At that time, Zhongzhe could vaguely sense that Lin Yuan was just a B-rank spirit chi professional. However, Zhongzhe had used up all the spiritual power in his body, but Lin Yuan seemed to be fine. There was still a large amount of spiritual energy that could be used. Lu Jia planned to display the fruits of his labor over the past 6 months in this battle. Lu Jia said to Gao Feng, "Gao Feng, in terms of spiritual power after we enter the arena, you will give me priority. The insect-type carcinoma Fey that I possess requires a certain amount of spiritual power to produce. During the battle I will use many types of insect-type carcinoma Feys." Gao Feng and Zhongzhe had seen it before. During the Dark Night Assembly, Lu Jia had used the insect-type carcinoma phase to battle. In order for the insect-type carcinoma phase to fully display their strength, they would need a large platform. It could be said that in the civil and martial arena, Lu Jia's usage of the insect-type carcinoma phase was restricted. Even so, Lu Jia still defeated all of his opponents in the martial arena. Lu Yifan could already see it. Black, who was wearing a silver mask, was obviously very familiar with Zhongzhe, Lu Jia and Gao Feng. Furthermore, she was the one who could make the decision. Lu Yifan said to Black, "During the battle later, why don't you be the commander? During the battle, why don't you be the commander? I will provide the most thorough protection for all of you during the battle. You can trust me on this. Although I am not familiar with your phase and sacred source life forms, I will quickly familiarize myself with them during the battle." Lin Yuan did not stand on ceremony when he heard Lu Yifan's words. He immediately took over the responsibility of being the commander. "Big brother Lu Yifan, I will not be commanding you during the battle. We'll do as you say. You just need to protect us." While the Radiance Federation was deciding who would be the commander and how they would conduct the battle, all of the spectators on Star Web, including the Radiance 100 sequence members and the 13 Highnesses, had solemn expressions. In just 1 more minute the half-hour battle conference would be over. At that time, the Radiance Federation and Freedom Federation's 10 members would form teams. At that time, the Radiance Federation and the Freedom Federation's 10 members would form teams. They would be teleported to either side of the dual ground. The battle would officially begin. When the battle started, none of the spectators felt that it could be broadcasted on Star Web. However, the 13 Highnesses had decided to do so. The Class 6 Abyss Dimensional Rift had opened and the 2-year agreement between the Radiance Federation and the Freedom Federation. This allowed many Spirit Chi professionals and ordinary people to understand something. Many Spirit Chi professionals who did not want to go to the Abyss world to develop and train had all signed up. They were prepared to temper themselves in blood and fire. In this turbulent great world, it was for self-protection and to protect the radiance in their hearts. All of a sudden, in the Freedom Federation and the Radiance Federation's combat conference rooms on both sides of the dual ground, the shell fragment that had marked the location in advance suddenly split open a spatial door. After this spatial door split open, the 2 groups of people walked into the portal at the first moment. This was because both sides knew. The first to arrive at the dual ground would be able to gain the upper hand to some extent no matter what combat method was used. The area of the dual ground was 10 square kilometers. This area was already extremely wide for a 5-on-5 duel between 2 teams. Within this 10 square kilometers, there were over a dozen types of terrains, condensed into 6 types of climates. Each terrain and climate had a certain degree of help for specific phase. This caused each climate and environment to have a certain impact on the battle situation. Lin Yuan, Lu Yifan, Zhongzhe, Lu Jia and Gao Feng. They were teleported to a hilly area. The hilly area was considered the worst terrain among the dozen types of terrains. 7017K. Chapter 1736. Firstly, the hills would block the line of sight. Secondly, if a huge land fey was summoned in the hilly area, these land feys would be restricted in the hilly area. But all of this was not a bad thing for Lin Yuan. After the hard rocks of the hills were ground by the source sand, they would be more powerful. Lin Yuan's hand shook, and the amber button-shaped source sand fell on the hard rock under his feet. Lin Yuan's hand shook, and the amber button-shaped source sand landed on the hard stone under his feet. Lin Yuan raised his hand and used little black spirit injection on himself and Lu Jia. Lin Yuan raised his hand and cast spirit injection on himself and Lu Jia. The source sand quickly ground the surrounding rocks and frantically created sand. In less than a minute, it turned an area of 2,000 square meters. In less than a minute, it had covered an area of 2,000 square meters. Lin Yuan had cooperated with Lu Jie before. In a sense, the yellow sand was the best shelter for the insect swarm. In a sense, the yellow sand was the best cover for the swarm. In a sense, the yellow sand was the best shelter for the insect swarm. Under the guidance of the breeze hibiscus, the surrounding spiritual power quickly gathered toward the spirit spring lily. Each of the spirit spring lily's blooming flowers spat out a stream of spirit spring water. Dozens of spirit spring water flowed into Lu Jie's body. In an instant, Lu Jie felt the surging spiritual power contained in these spirit springs. Lu Jie stretched out his hand and snapped his fingers. The dimensional light moth immediately appeared above Lu Jie's head. Then the dimensional light moth flew low and used the 2 stone hills that Lin Yuan had deliberately left as cover. A large number of flesh-mincing blade insects, lightning-gathering moths, plasma caterpillars and hurricane owlet moths were produced. Those hurricane owlet moths were all simplified versions. The huge wings rode the wind and had a speed not inferior to the bronze divine travel black swallow. These hurricane owlet moths scattered like snowflakes. It was to find the location of the Freedom Federation's envoy members in the air. In a very short time, as Lu Jie's spiritual power was constantly consumed, Gao Feng even had to let the spirit spring lily begin to restore his spiritual power. It could be said that Gao Feng had almost given more than half of the spiritual power in his body to Lu Jie in an instant. This allowed Lu Jie's insect queen to maximize the insect swarm. The dimensional light moth seemed to have diarrhea and queued for nearly 8 minutes. Gao Feng, Zhongzhe and Lu Yifan knew that Lu Jie had produced a lot of alien insects, but he couldn't be sure how many alien insects were produced. However, both of them were very clear about the alien insects' numbers. The source sand dug one tunnel after another in the sand beneath its feet. These tunnels were basically filled with flesh-mincing blade insects. At the same time, the source sand dug out 2 spaces of 600 square meters underground. In this space, 2 groups of plasma caterpillars and lightning-gathering moths were continuously condensing powerful plasma cannons. Lin Yuan saw that Gao Feng's spirit qi was somewhat insufficient. He raised his hand and cast a spirit injection on Gao Feng. After all, Blackie's strength was at Diamond X/Fantasy V. Gao Feng's consumed spiritual power quickly recovered under Little Black's spiritual injection. On Lu Yifan's side, he did not summon his main phase, the Yin-Yang bull and the 4 symbols 8 trigrams deer. He only summoned the desolate bloodline fae, the sky peach blue bird. One green peach tree after another grew out of the sea of sand. These peach trees had just appeared, so they were still in a bare state. However, they soon branched and grew new leaves. The new leaves went from tender to lush, and finally green peach blossoms bloomed among the leaves. Lu Yifan did not choose to let these peach blossoms bear fruit. Instead, he chose to let these peach blossoms fall one after another. They fell on himself, Gao Feng, Black, Zhongzhe, Lu Jie and the currently summoned fae, the dimensional light moth. As the peach blossom petals overlapped, a green peach blossom mark appeared on everyone's body. Then they put on a battle dress with peach trees and blue birds. Finally, a small sky peach blue bird hovered around everyone's body. After the small sky peach blue bird appeared on everyone's body, Lu Yifan commanded the sky peach blue bird so that these green peach trees no longer fell flowers. Instead, he let the peach blossoms breed peach fruits in preparation for the battle later. Lu Jie saw that the insect swarm produced by the insect queen was almost enough. With a wave of his hand, he summoned an extremely disgusting strange alien insect that looked like a black headless earthworm. However, compared to an earthworm, this alien insect's body could extend much longer. This insect species Carcinoma fae would leave a deep impression on anyone who participated in the Great Night Assembly. This was because this insect species Carcinoma Fey was the mycelium tapeworm that Lu Jie had summoned during the martial duel. As an insect species Carcinoma Fey, the mycelium tapeworm had an extremely strong adaptability to the environment. Although the sand was dry, it did not stop the mycelium tapeworm from covering its fungal carpet on the yellow sand. It was rumored that the insect species Carcinoma Fey, the mycelium tapeworm, had the ability to spread its fungal carpet in the magma. Lu Jie's mycelium tapeworm had reached diamond/legend. On the purplish-black fungal carpet that was spread, the mycelium tapeworm was rapidly dividing. Soon the fungal carpet was covered with black mycelium tapeworms. Under Lin Yuan's command, these mycelium tapeworms were buried by the source sand. They were buried 1 meter underground. Under the ground, the mycelium tapeworm's fungal carpet was still constantly expanding. These buried mycelium tapeworms could be said to be the insect swarm's second life. When the insect swarm died in the battle, the mycelium tapeworms would parasitize the dead insects. They would control the dead insects' bodies. Then they would enter a new round of battle. This was not the end. Lu Jie now controlled over 10 insect species Carcinoma Feys. How could he only summon one during the battle? After fusing with the source-type cocoon demon embryo, the Blade Queen Bee had become a 4-winged demon. It was at an evolutionary juncture. As long as the Blade Queen Bee could comprehend the willpower rune from heaven and earth, it would be able to become a myth breed. The Blade Queen Bee was an insect species Carcinoma Fey that was controlled by the Insect Queen. It was not restricted by Lu Jie's Spirit Chi professional rank. The dimensional light moth opened its abdomen and fired like a machine gun. It spat out a total of 80 black caterpillars with spikes all over their bodies. Under Lu Jie's command, the Insect Queen produced another 80 hidden armor ladybugs that contain the most abundant insect protein. As soon as these 80 hidden armor ladybugs were born, they knew their mission. It was to provide food for the Blade Queen Bee's larvae. The hidden armor ladybugs lay in the yellow sand and opened up their carapaces, revealing the soft abdomen beneath their wings. It was convenient for these blade worms to parasitize. They would then rely on the hidden armor ladybug's nutrients to grow into their adult state. The Blade Queen Bee's larvae had already burrowed into the hidden armor ladybug's soft abdomen and were feasting. However, the 80 hidden armor ladybugs that were still alive did not let out a single sound. Lu Jie continued to summon an insect species Carcinoma Fey that Lin Yuan had never seen before. 7017K. Chapter 1737. The Star Web viewers were deeply shocked by Lu Jie's combat strength. Or rather, they were deeply shocked by the insect swarm's discipline. In fact, many of the Star Web viewers were very puzzled. How did Lu Jie return to the Radiance 100 sequence this year and ascend to the first position of the 100 sequence? Could it be because he had become Lord Nightguard's disciple? Now all the viewers understood how terrifying Lu Jie's strength was. None of the insects that the dimensional light moths had spat out were lower than diamond. In the eyes of many Spirit Chi professionals who had ventured into the alien insect dimensional rifts, these insects were terrifying. Its degree of terror was already not inferior to a Class 4 alien insect dimensional rift. Even the alien insects in Class 4 alien insect dimensional rifts did not have such high quality. Lu Jie had used his strength to control the insect swarm. He had allowed the insects to cooperate and obey orders, giving rise to a magnificent feeling of greatness. Lu Jie lived up to his name and was the true heart of the insect swarm. The new insect species Tumor Fey that Lu Jie had summoned was a yellowish-brown locust that looked very unremarkable. This locust was only the size of half of Lu Jie's palm. Its abdomen was bulging and it was almost like a ball. This unremarkable locust might not be the poison dust-flying locust, but it instantly evoked a terrifying memory of Golden Edge City's residents. Back then, the insect species Tumor Fey, sawtooth devour ants, had wreaked havoc outside Golden Edge City and nearly caused the residents to starve to death. The sawtooth devour ants could swallow everything in sight into their abdomens. Every time they were full, they would enter the incubation state and produce new sawtooth devour ants. After a few hours, the newly born sawtooth devourer ants would hatch from their eggs. After hatching, they would only need one meal to enter the adult state. Back then, it was another insect species Tumor Fey, the poison dust-flying locust, that had saved Golden Edge City. However, the poison dust-flying locust was not the main contributor. Wherever the poison dust flying locust passed, there would be poisonous smoke everywhere. After being contaminated by the poisonous smoke, Golden Edge City might have been treated with spirit fluids by creation masters and could now be used to grow some cash crops. However, the production of cash crops was surprisingly low and could not even make up for the cost. This disaster caused Gold Edge City to go from being a big city with abundant resources to being able to export large amounts of cash crops every year. It became the largest city among all the cities that imported the most food and spiritual materials. It overturned the original economic structure of Gold Edge City. This caused Gold Edge City to fall from the 7th place to the 28th place. Lin Yuan used Morbius True Data to check the locusts in Lu Jie's hands. With a glance, he discovered that this new insect-type carcinoma Fey was called the parasitic rot-flying locust. After understanding the parasitic rot-flying locust's exclusive skill, Lin Yuan could not help but click his tongue. The poison dust-flying locust was also an insect-type tumor Fey, but in terms of toxin, it was stronger than the parasitic rot-flying locust. However, the parasitic rot-flying locust was definitely ranked first in terms of its ability to destroy the ecosystem. Lin Yuan knew why Lu Jie had summoned the rot-flying locust. Lu Jie had summoned the parasitic rot-flying locust to destroy the surrounding environment. Since they were going to engage in positional warfare, they naturally had no requirements for the environment. If the enemy wanted to fight them, they would have to attack them from the surroundings. Thus, the enemy could rely on the environment around their position. Lu Jie's thinking was very simple. Since he couldn't use it on his side, then the other party shouldn't think about using it either. Lu Jie shouted, "Parasitic rotting locusts, fill the entire dueling ground with your descendants. Parasitize all the living plants in the dueling ground." He drank all the water. Chew through all the rocks. Following Lu Jie's command, the Diamond X/legendary rot-flying locust flew into the air. This parasitic rot-flying locust was a queen locust, so its stomach was ridiculously big. Therefore it flew very slowly. The parasitic rot-flying locust slowly flew to the edge of the yellow sand. Suddenly he plunged into a huge ancient tree and drilled into the trunk. In less than 10 seconds the ancient tree began to shake rapidly. Then the tree trunk was corroded with holes. A green sandstorm seemed to be spewing out from the inside of the tree, dispersing in all directions. Lin Yuan, Lu Yifan, Zhong Zhe and Gao Feng could all see it clearly. These things that looked like a sandstorm were all locusts' larvae. They watched as the locusts landed on the trees beside them. They corroded these trees. After these parasitic rot-flying locusts rusted the tree trunk, they would not completely devour it. Instead they would use the tree trunk as their nest. After occupying the tree trunk, a parasitic rot-flying locust larva would rapidly develop into a queen locust. Then with the tree trunk as a base, they would once again produce a large number of larvae. At the same time the green larvae that flew out would grow into adults. They would often return with large pieces of wood or grass to feed the queen locust. This would replenish the nutrients for the queen locust so that it could produce more larvae. In just 2 minutes the entire 100,000 square kilometer area was barren. There was not a single blade of grass growing within 10,000 kilometers. Rocks were gnawed to pieces and rivers were drained. However, all the larger trees had queen locusts living in them. Because these queen locusts were too far away, they could not receive any supplies. They emitted intense insect cries and constantly urged the parasitic rot-flying locust larvae to grow. This caused the parasitic rot-flying locust larvae to enter a berserk state and become extremely aggressive. These parasitic rot-flying locust larvae surrounded the yellow sand like a no-man's land. At this moment, 80 stern roars rang out. The 80 hidden armor ladybugs that had opened their wings and exposed their soft abdomens had finally used the energy within their bodies to raise the blade worms. The blade worms had already grown into adults and burrowed out of the hidden armor ladybugs' bodies. A total of 80 worms that were nearly 8 meters long and covered in blade-like spikes appeared beside Lu Jie. These blade worms had been specially nurtured by the Blade Queen Bee. Lu Jie had also fed them with 80 Fantasy 3 hidden armor ladybugs. These blade worms had basically reached Diamond X Fantasy thrice. Only a few of them were underdeveloped and were at Diamond X/Fantasy 2. These blade worms were all the Blade Queen Bee's strongest weapons. Together with the blade worms that had grown to a certain size, they could use their strong bodies to charge at the enemy after death. When Lu Jia was fighting Long Tao, he had summoned 2 insect-type carcinoma phase. These 2 insect-type carcinoma phase were the devil flower shield bug and the floating hat bug. Since the parasitic rot-flying locust had drunk all the water, Lu Jia had no need to summon them. Thus, there was no need for Lu Jia to summon the devil flower shield bug, which relied on water to fight. However, Lu Jia still summoned the devil flower shield bug. As the only pure support in the team, Gao Feng had set his own requirements. Before the other 4 fell, Gao Feng could not be attacked. 7017K. Chapter 1738. Thus, Gao Feng didn't need any special protection. Lu Jia let the demon flower gas shield bug climb onto Lin Yuan's body. It would protect Lin Yuan. Then Lu Jia snapped his fingers twice. The dead soul caterpillar was summoned by Lu Jia. At the same time, the dead soul caterpillar was still residing in the orchid petal blade centipede's body and burrowed into the sand like a ghost. Firstly, the dead soul caterpillar could control the orchid petal blade centipede to attack its target like an assassin. Secondly, after the orchid petal blade centipede's body was destroyed, the dead soul caterpillar could find an opportunity to parasitize and control other life forms. Just as the dead soul caterpillar appeared, another flat, crawling insect-type tumor fey that would leave black marks on the ground was summoned. Once this insect-type tumor fey appeared, Lu Jia let the 2 hurricane owlet moths bring it to the edge of the sea of sand. Lin Yuan made use of this opportunity to use Morbius True Data to investigate the insect species Carcinoma fey. With a glance, Lin Yuan realized that this insect-type tumor fey was called the Rotten Earth Ruin Bug. It could turn land into wasteland, and wasteland had a powerful amplification effect on other insect-type tumor phase. The Rotten Earth Ruin Bug's corrosion was spreading at a visible speed at the edge of the sea of sand. When the parasitic rot-flying locust queen roared, all the parasitic rot-flying locust entered a berserk state. However, when the berserk adult parasitic rot-flying locust consumed the wasteland soil, the parasitic rot-flying locust would not disappear. Although the berserk state did not disappear, after being fed to the insect queen could quickly produce another batch of larvae. It would expand the parasitic rot-flying locust army from the inside out. Lin Yuan had heard of the insect-type tumor fey, the Rotten Earth Ruin Bug. The appearance of the Rotten Earth Ruin Bug would turn land into wasteland. It was very easy to distinguish. Furthermore, the Rotten Earth Ruin Bug would not reproduce and would only have 1 adult. However, the Rotten Earth Ruin Bug was ranked very high among the insect-type tumor phase. This was because once the Rotten Earth Ruin Bug came into contact with other insect-type tumor phase, the insect-type tumor phase that the Rotten Earth Ruin Bug nurtured would erupt into an uncontrollable natural disaster in a short period of time. Lu Jia summoned 7 insect-type tumor phase in a row. In an instant, it evolved into a small-scale natural disaster. Apart from Night Leaning Moon, the Star Web's audience, the Radiance 100 sequence members, and the 12 Radiance Federation's eminences were stunned. Lian Shen and Li Yang were also stunned. Goddess Lian and Li Yang only had one thought in their minds, and that was, what was the Radiance Federation doing? Was he breeding a monster? What method did this person use to control so many insect-type carcinoma phase at once? It would have been fine if they were just bronze and gold insect species phase, but their strength had actually reached Diamond X/Legend. Fortunately, the competition venue was only 10 square kilometers. If the area of the examination was more than 100 square kilometers, he would give Night Leaning Moon's disciple some more time to develop. In that case, they might as well not fight the team battle. Even if Lu O fused with that great devil, the calamity formed by these alien insects would not be able to withstand it. Don't even think about breaking through to the central region. It could be said that this young man named Lu Jia was an invincible existence on a large-scale battlefield. Zhongzhe had met Lu Jia during the sparring portion of the competition. He had only used 3 carcinoma phase at once. Now that he saw Lu Jia using 7 at once, he could not help but gulp down his saliva. Lu Jia, don't tell me that you still have insect-type carcinoma phase. Lu Jia replied in a very honest manner. When I introduced my strength previously, I only mentioned my insect queen. I forgot to tell you that I have a total of 17 insect-type carcinoma phase. Apart from 1 that is not on me, the other 3 are suitable for underwater battles. I have 13 that I can use, and there are still 6 that I have yet to summon. It is because I feel that controlling 7 carcinoma phase at once is already my limit. In my opinion, these 7 are the best way to use them. Zhongzhe originally had an idea. He wanted to challenge Lu Jie to a duel. This idea had appeared in Zhongzhe's mind after the Dark Night meeting had ended. However, Zhongzhe had given up on this idea. On a 300 square meter platform he could easily defeat Lu Jie. However, if it was a large arena he would easily be exhausted to death by Lu Jie. Therefore there was no meaning in a duel with Lu Jie. Zhongzhe's strength was in his control of the arena and the environment, as well as his unparalleled defensive ability. But Lu Jie's move made Zhongzhe feel that Lu Jie was already qualified to be the current Radiance Envoy. However, Zhongzhe did not know. Lu Jie had already agreed with Night Leaning Moon to give up on competing for the position of the Radiance Envoy. Instead he would become a member of the Radiance Knights after he became a Radiance Envoy. While Lu Jie was setting up the battlefield, Lin Yuan was not idling around. He did not release Red Thorn, but he released the 40 spore cavities that Red Thorn had specially nurtured. These spore cavities sprayed spores, and Red Thorn was not stingy with its eye of relinquish. On the bare ground that had been gnawed by the rot-flying locusts, suddenly batch after batch of gluttonous vines grew. These gluttonous vines were supplied with energy by the eye of relinquish. Even without a large number of corpses, they were still growing vigorously. In just 2 seconds they had grown from 10 centimeters to 1 meter. In less than 40 seconds, each gluttonous vine had grown to more than 10 meters. These gluttonous vines continued to expand outwards. Following Lu Jie's order, the adult rot-flying locust began to move. They did not attack the gluttonous vines. Instead they flew toward the gluttonous vines. With the gluttonous vines as cover, the sea of flowers and the sea of insects coexisted perfectly. The Radiance Federation had already set up their formation. However, the Freedom Federation's 5 members had a disagreement after entering the test venue. This disagreement was mainly between Yan Ling and Yu Changjian. Once Yan Ling entered the test venue, she requested Kai Hua and Yu Changjian to summon their sacred source life forms. The trio's sacred source life forms were linked. In the end, Yu Changjian rejected Yan Ling's suggestion. He indicated that he would only use it when he saw the enemy. This way he could conserve spiritual power. Before the few of them could argue or even discuss which method they would use to fight against the Radiance Federation's 5 people, the Radiance Federation's people had already arrived. Suddenly they heard a large buzzing sound coming from the forest beside them. It was as if a large number of things were flying toward them. Seeing this scene, Lu O's face revealed a smile. She said softly, "Just nice, I'm hungry. Finally there's food." As she spoke, 4 black horns suddenly emerged from Lu O's short white hair. 7017K. Chapter 1739. 2 of these 4 black horns extended upward, while the other 2 extended to the left and right. The 2 horns, one on the left and one on the right, had circular patterns on them. The 2 horns on the top of his head were abnormally smooth. As soon as the 4 horns appeared, a depraved, evil and strange aura suddenly erupted with Lu O as the center. The edge of Lu O's short hair was dyed dark red. Lu O's eyes had turned black and his pupils, which were dark gold and red, revealed a touch of ridicule. It was completely different from the feeling that Lu O gave off before. Previously, Lu O had looked like a cute white-haired Shota. But now Lu O was like a ferocious and bloodthirsty tyrant. It was as if everything in the world was treated as food that could be eaten. Yan Ling, Kai Hua and Yu Changjian all looked at Lu O with fear. Especially Yan Ling and Yu Changjian. This was because Yan Ling and Yu Changjian had each contracted a demon. Yan Ling had contracted a middle-rank demon, while Yu Changjian had contracted a low-rank demon. Yu Changjian, who had contracted a low-rank demon, had not fallen to the ground, which was already a sign of strong willpower. After contracting a demon, the soul would fuse with the demon. Therefore, Yu Changjian, who had contracted a low-rank demon, had a sense of fear from the bottom of his heart toward the aura of a high-rank demon. Qian Yu did not expect Lu O to make the first move. But now he was already in the test venue. In the forest not far away, the sounds of a large number of insect species phase could be heard. There should not be any living beings in the duel ground. The appearance of living beings here meant that the enemy had released them. Qian Yu was not sure if these large number of insect species phase were sent by the other party to be the vanguard. Or was it a killing move from the start? Therefore Qianyu waved his hand, and a huge strange fish that was about 6 meters long appeared behind him. This strange fish's body was covered with a thick layer of shield skin. The huge cuticle that formed the fish's mouth opened, and a stench suddenly burst out. After the small strange fish appeared, the sound of its heartbeat was like a drum, causing the earth to tremble. If Lin Yuan saw this strange fish, he would definitely know. This strange fish had basically reached the limit of a fish phase atavism. This fish fae had the bloodline of a fish phase ancestor from hundreds of millions of years ago. It had an extremely strong suppression on other fish phase. Qianyu yelled, "Descending Cambrian." Hearing Qianyu's command, the green-skinned fish's skin suddenly turned purplish-red. A chaotic wave of water elemental energy swept out in all directions with this strange fish as the center. It was as if a sea from hundreds of millions of years ago was about to open up beneath their feet. At this moment Qianyu met Luo's gaze. Luo's eyes, which were a mixture of scarlet and dark gold, clearly showed his dissatisfaction towards him. He even felt an unconcealable malice towards himself. Qianyu immediately thought of Luo's greater devil's uniqueness. He quickly stopped his fae and executed his exclusive skill, Cambrian Descent. If the E-Descent of Cambrian was activated, it would instantly crush those insects. This was equivalent to ruining Luo's meal. I heard that apart from Her Highness Nana, no one could use any method to stop Luo from eating. Otherwise he would be seen as an enemy by Luo. At this time the swarm of rot-flying locusts had already flown over. Looking at the disgusting adult parasitic rot-flying locust, Luo's appetite did not diminish at all. Luo fiercely let out a breath and his abdomen instantly caved in. Immediately after, Luo opened his mouth and suddenly inhaled. A black-red wind instantly appeared in front of Luo. Within this wind there were many black-red claws. It was as if he was afraid that the parasitic rot-flying locusts would escape. He firmly controlled these parasitic rot-flying locusts within this black-red wind. As an insect-type carcinoma fae, the parasitic rot-flying locusts had an extremely strong reproductive ability. Through Lu Jie's forward-pushing breeding method, with the help of another insect-type carcinoma fae, the spoiled soil ruin insect, the number of parasitic rot-flying locusts could be counted by tens of millions. Gradually, this black-red wind was almost filled with parasitic rot-flying locusts. However, Luo was obviously not satisfied. It was as if these tens of millions of parasitic rot-flying locusts were not enough. In front of Luo's originally white fingers, there was a black nail that was nearly 10 centimeters long. This black nail was abnormally sharp. Luo's index finger pointed forward. This black wind instantly materialized into a wriggling stomach. Under the stomach there was a meandering intestine that connected to the ground. This stomach formed by the black-red wind quickly wriggled. Millions of gold, platinum and diamond parasitic rot-flying locusts were crushed by the stomach wall. The sound of explosions could be heard. Immediately after, Luo's face revealed a satisfied expression. However, it was obvious that this meal did not taste good. Luo could only fill her stomach, but she could not enjoy it to her heart's content. Yanling recovered from her shock and subconsciously said, "It would be great. It would be great if I could be like Kai Hua, a demon without a contract." Hearing Yanling's words, the corners of Yu Changjian's mouth subconsciously twitched. Yanling had always been like this. She spoke without thinking. Kai Hua was the last to join the group of 3. In the beginning, Yu Changjian and Yanling's sacred source life forms were linked together. Kai Hua's appearance allowed the 3 sacred source life forms to link together to form a closed loop. Because Kai Hua was the last to join, he had not made any contributions and had not been granted the opportunity to form a demon. After all, the number of demons that the Devil Cathedral could produce was very small. Among the 400 or so favored by His Majesty, there were less than 10 in the younger generation who had the qualifications to form a contract with a demon. This was also why Han Qi had not offended Kai Hua. It was also why Kai Hua had always been targeting him. Because Kai Hua was jealous that Han Qi had a middle-rank demon while he did not. Yanling's words were like a knife cutting open Kai Hua's heart. She ruthlessly humiliated Kai Hua. In the past, perhaps Yu Changjian would have specially said a few words to help. But now Luo was eating. If they really quarreled and made a sound, it would make Luo's meal unhappy. Yu Changjian felt that Luo had previously said that she would eat them. Luo would use the abilities of the three of them for a period of time. He did not think it was impossible. Kaihui clearly understood this point. Kaihui's expression was angry as he looked at Yanling with a sinister look. He realized that Yanling was still patting her chest with lingering fear. Kaihui could not remember Yanling's careless mistake in the past month. How many times had he understood it? Luo was eating, so even Qianyu could not interfere. Fortunately, after eating for 10 minutes, Luo seemed to have grown tired of eating the parasitic flying locusts. Luo's raised finger did not lower it. The hand that had grabbed the parasitic flying locusts from his stomach held a diamond-rank parasitic flying locusts and brought them in front of Luo. 7017K. Chapter 1740. Luo's middle finger, which had a long and slender black nail, suddenly pierced into the diamond-rank rotting flying locust's head. Then a strong ghostly aura appeared behind Luo. It was as if a creature was about to reveal its majestic appearance in the form of a monarch within the ghost chi. At this time, Qianyu heard Luo speaking in the cryptic ghost language. Race judgment. Then in an instant, the sound of the rot flying locust's wings could no longer be heard. Even the parasitic rotting flying locust queen stopped breathing at this moment. Lu Jie, who was 8 kilometers away, furrowed his brows. Lu Jie took a deep breath and said to Lin Yuan, Zhong Zai, Lu Yifan and Gao Feng. The parasitic rot flying locust queen is dead. The larvae, adults and main body are all dead. Lu Jie could use the hurricane owlet moths produced by the insect queen to scout the environment. This was because the insect queen had an extremely high intelligence. Based on what the hurricane owlet moths could find, they could act as his eyes. However, even if the rotting locust queen was at Diamond/Legend, it would not be able to withstand the rotting locust queen. Its intelligence was no different from a silver fey and there was no way to communicate with it. It could only be controlled through the insect queen. Moreover, the rotting flying locust queen could only control the larvae produced one way. There was no way to get feedback from these larvae that had grown into adults. Therefore, Lu Jie had no idea what was happening in the distance. At this moment, Lu Jie hurriedly ordered the hurricane owlet moths to expand outward and investigate. Fortunately, the death of the insect-type carcinoma phase did not affect the insect queen. When the insect queen controlled the insect-type carcinoma phase, it used a mental toxin and a certain amount of spiritual energy. Now that an insect-type carcinoma phase was dead, the insect queen could use more spiritual energy than before. Lu Jie summoned another insect-type carcinoma phase. The appearance of this insect-type carcinoma phase was very unique. Its reflective green carapace, brightly colored antennae, and flapping wings were even more gorgeous than butterflies. This insect species carcinoma phase was called the spirit-burning golden tortoise. The gas that the spirit-burning golden tortoise sprayed out from its abdomen could burn the surrounding spiritual energy and elemental energy. However, under the insect queen's control, the insect queen could now point at the spirit-burning golden tortoise. He only left behind the elemental energy he needed. Based on his previous understanding, it could be said that water, fire, and wind were the 3 types of elemental energy that drifted freely in the environment. The only thing he needed was fire. After burning the other elemental energies, the fire elemental energy would become relatively dense. Therefore, it was beneficial to Zhong Zai's battle. Thus, Lu Jie ordered the insect-type carcinoma phase, the spirit-burning golden tortoise. He asked the spirit-burning golden tortoise to spray out gas from its abdomen to change the environment, burning the wind and water elemental energies in the air. As for earth elemental energy, it was abundant in the ground, and the spirit-burning golden tortoise had no way of burning it. Furthermore, the source sand also needed to use earth elemental energy. Lin Yuan started from when Lu Jie said that the insect-type carcinoma phase, the rotting flying locust, had been completely wiped out. He had been thinking about what kind of energy could cause such a huge impact on the entire colony of the rot-flying locusts. Didn't this mean that the Freedom Federation possessed the fundamental ability to control the insect-type carcinoma phase? Just as Lin Yuan was guessing, over at the Freedom Federation's side, Luo turned around and spoke to Yanling, Kaihui, and Yu Chongjian. I've already said it outside. The 3 of you should stop arguing. However, the 3 of you have only been here for 10 minutes. Yet you've already forgotten about my words. If there is a next time, I will explain to His Majesty who cares for you after I eat you. When Luo spoke, her expression was casual. However, those who knew Luo knew that she never made empty promises. Luo flicked his sleeve and another Luo suddenly appeared beside him. However, this Luo was different from the current Luo. This Luo didn't activate the greater devil within his body. He was a harmless white-haired Shota, compared to Luo who controlled the great demon. Just like a little angel. However, compared to Luo himself, Qianyu was looking at the other Luo beside Luo with more fear. Qianyu said in a deep voice. Luo, the bloodline of the phaseless beast that Her Highness Na gave you was actually nurtured to such an extent. Originally, the Freedom Federation had heard rumors in recent years that a large number of male youths had gone missing. These male youths all had a common characteristic. They were all younger than 20 years old and all of their birthdays were on August 27th. Luo's birthday was also on August 27th. Before the faceless beast could transform into a human form, it had to first taste the various forms of the human world. Those missing youths turned out to be related to Luo. Qianyu had always felt that Luo was a rather upright person. However, he didn't expect Luo to also be a black-hearted fellow. It was unknown what color of heart was hidden under his harmless appearance. That's right. How could his heart be completely white if he could form a connection with the greater devil? Luo stretched his back and said, "This team battle has no time limit." There is no time limit for this team battle. Both sides must determine a victor before it can be considered over. The Radiance Federation will naturally broadcast this duel on the Star Web. Then let's bulldoze over. Let's let the Radiance Federation know that the Freedom Federation is the strongest of the three major federations. Qianyu coughed lightly and said to Luo, "We can bulldoze over, but the other party has already discovered our existence. It's just that the other party has already discovered our existence." There are a few white butterflies flying in the sky. Luo seemed to have seen through Qianyu's thoughts. He raised his hand and looked at his black fingernails. "My greater devil race judgment can only be used 3 times a year. I used it once before because that insect swarm was caused by an insect-type carcinoma Fey. I don't need it. With just your Fey you won't be able to kill the Cambrian petrified fish. This insect-type carcinoma Fey is at least platinum. You still need to summon another Fey for that to be possible. Rather than letting you exhaust your spirit chi, why don't I do it? I haven't even used one of the 3 race judgments this year. Qianyu, we must win this duel. The 3 of them are not of one mind. They are too reliant on the 3 sacred source life forms' combined ability. In this world, what kind of ability can't be restrained?" Qianyu heard Luo's words and replied, "Since you say so, then I'll conserve the spiritual power in my body on the way there. I'll leave everything to you." After saying that, Qianyu looked at Yanling, Kaihua and Yu Chongjian. "Even if Luo says to bulldoze over, the 3 of you must first summon your sacred source life forms. Apart from the sacred source life forms, don't hide your main phase. To be honest, if the 3 of you can't achieve the desired effect, why don't you let Luo eat them? I will fight alongside Luo, and the 3 of you won't have to worry about the rear." 7017K. Chapter 1741. Yanling, Kaihua and Yu Chongjian's sacred source life forms could link with each other. During the link, the 3 of them could provide a huge boost to the team. It didn't matter if it was a small team of 3 or 5 people or a large team of 40 or 50 people. The effect of this linkage was very effective. In fact, the more people there were, the stronger the link effect of the 3 sacred source life forms would be. The 3 of them had originally thought that after the team battle, both sides would have at least 10 people participating. In the end, after Qianyu lost the general beheading battle on the Freedom Federation's side, he had only chosen 5 people. As a result, Kaihua Yanling and Yu Chongjian's sacred source life forms link ability was greatly reduced. To the 3 of them, what they were most afraid of was being targeted by the other party during the linkage period. The other party only needed to kill any one of them and there would be a gap in their cooperation. Even if the sacred source life forms activated their abilities, the 3 of them were confident that they could rely on the sacred source life forms' link ability to protect themselves. However, the 3 of them were the younger generation of the Freedom Federation, and they were 7 or 8 years younger than Qianyu. Qianyu was the team leader and the freedom envoy of the Freedom Federation's envoys. It was truly too chilling. He made it sound as if the 3 of them were the weakest in the team. What did he mean by fighting alongside Luo? What did he mean by the three of them being a worry? Yanling, Kaihua, and Yu Changjian all felt that Luo might go crazy and eat them up. But how could the three of them just let themselves be captured? In the end, Qianyu did not say anything to Luo. Instead, he played along with Luo's words. It was as if the three of them could only be used to their fullest potential if Luo ate them up. Kaihua and Yu Changjian did not have time to say anything. Yanling, who had always respected Qianyu the most, spoke up. Qianyu, the three of us can summon our sacred source life forms. But during the battle, you and Luo have the responsibility to protect the three of us. Otherwise, the three of us will be targeted by the other party and something will happen to us. With just you and Luo, do you really think you can defeat the five of them? The devils on our side don't have much ability to grow. Just like Qianyu, your devil didn't transform into a greater devil. However, compared to the devils produced by the Devil Cathedral, the Radiance Federation's Desolate Mystic Realms phase with the Desolate Bloodline have extremely strong growth potential. I don't know about others, but the current Radiance Envoy's Desolation Bloodline phase have always had the chance to reach the Great Desolate Realm. The Great Desolate Territory's Bloodline of Desolation is targeting the Great Devil. We don't have much of an advantage here. You have a trump card, but do you think the other side doesn't have a trump card? When Qianyu heard Yanling's words, his eyes narrowed. He knew that Yanling said this to emphasize the importance of the three of them in the team. Without the three of them, they would really clash with the Radiance Federation. He and Luo might not be able to win. These words made a lot of sense. However, Qianyu was rather surprised. He didn't expect such dejected words to come out from the mouth of Yanling, who had always been arrogant but had little ability. It seemed like Yanling was afraid. Kaihua's and Yu Changjian's faces were pale. She looked at Luo and Qianyu with fear. However, she still followed their instructions and summoned the sacred source life form. At that moment, dense spider shadows suddenly appeared beside Kaihua. These spider shadows were made of small spiders with black legs and black-red carapace. Their round, bulging abdomens were as red as blood. Finally, these spider shadows gathered together to form a human-faced arachnid. The upper body of this arachnid was that of an abnormally beautiful middle-aged woman. However, her long and narrow eyes and two sharp teeth protruding from her thin lips made this arachnid look extremely sinister. The arachnid spread out her hands, which were like brackets. Between her hands were dense spider webs. The spider webs were filled with tiny spider shadows that constantly crawled. Beside Yu Changjian, a thick and sturdy wild boar appeared. The wild boar had huge golden fangs. On the back of this huge wild boar was a pair of golden wings. Its left front hoof was covered with a thick layer of iron armor. On the iron armor there were fine carvings. These carvings were like hieroglyphics. It was as if there were many wild boars with huge fangs being tortured in various ways. Finally, the huge wild boar's legs shook the ground. The wild boar's head shrank into its abdomen. Finally, an extremely strong middle-aged woman emerged from its back. Slender wild boar fangs grew from the woman's mouth, and a pair of golden wings sprouted from her back. Her left hand was made of iron. The carvings on the iron hand emitted mournful wails. Yanling did not want to summon the sacred source life form now. The white moths in the sky were obviously the enemy's spies. Before the enemy's spies were eliminated, the three of them had to summon their sacred source life forms and activate their abilities. Even if the enemy did not know what the ability was, it would be difficult for them not to think about it. However, the situation was beyond their control. Luo and Qianyu did not take the three of them seriously. Kaihua and Yu Changjian were the first to summon their sacred source life forms. Yanling had no choice but to summon her own sacred source life form as well. Kaihua's and Yu Changjian's sacred source life forms were ugly. Yanling's sacred source life form was much nicer in appearance. A huge clamshell appeared under Yanling's feet. Once the clamshell appeared, the area within a radius of 50 meters immediately turned into a body of water. The shell opened, revealing a young girl with a fish's body and a human face. The girl's skin was an icy blue color. It was similar to the sirens from the Lantis mystic realm of the Azure Federation. However, it did not have the sharp ears of the sirens. It also did not have the gorgeous fishtails of the sirens. The female demon made some space for Yanling inside the clamshell so that she could sit inside. Then she took out a huge folding fan from the coral shelf behind her. The folding fan was covered with densely packed dark blue seaweed that looked like hair. Every time the female demon fanned the fan, several streams of water would fly out from the clamshell. They circled around the huge clamshell. Luo looked at Yanling, Kaihua, and Yu Changjian, who had summoned their sacred source life forms. These 3 sacred source life forms all have the scent of Gorgon's bloodline. No wonder they can work together. The Freedom Federation had set foot in the swamp world more than a decade earlier than the Radiance Federation's exploration of the Abyss world. The exploration of dimensional worlds was not something that the Radiance Federation could compare to at the moment. In the beginning, the Freedom Federation's majesties had treated the swamp world as a huge treasure vault. They had explored the swamp world a lot and had basically emptied an area of resources in the swamp world. The factions in the swamp world were established according to each resource point. Therefore, the Freedom Federation had inevitably interacted with the apostles in the swamp world. The Freedom Federation's majesties had even met the ruler of the swamp world face to face. They had seen through the secret of the spirit transformation realm ruler. It turned out that dimensional life forms could choose when they reached the spirit transformation realm ruler level. 7017K. Chapter 1742. If they chose, they could transform into a human form based on the sacred source body. Then the spirit transformation ruler would have to start all over again. However, when they reached the samsara ruler level again, there was a high chance that they would be able to take that step. This was also why the apostles and rulers in the dimensional world were so willing to establish their factions. Yanling, Kaihua, and Yu Changjian's sacred source life forms had all been exchanged with the rulers in the swamp world by the Freedom Federation. For example, when the Medusa bloodline reached a certain level, they could choose to fuse with the bloodline of another life form. They could choose to fuse with the bloodline of a living being, and after the fusion, they would obtain the abilities of that living being. They would become a new type of sacred source life form. This type of sacred source life form had the same name, Gorgon. The Freedom Federation's rulers had once proposed a plan. It was to exchange for more sacred source life forms with the Gorgon bloodline from the rulers. In order to obtain the sacred source life forms with the Gorgon bloodline, they did not hesitate to capture a large number of Medusa demons. They would be jointly nurtured by the Class 5 creation masters of the Freedom Federation. But in the end the plan had failed. Otherwise, if they could obtain a few more sacred source life forms with the Gorgon bloodline, they could join Yanling, Kaihua, and Yu Changjian's joint effort. It should be able to make the joint effort stronger and more complete. Yanling, who had summoned the sacred source life forms, said to Qianyu and Luo, "Are you sure you don't want to shoot down those moths flying in the sky?" Luo asked as he walked forward. "You don't have to worry about such things. It's useless to think about keeping a trump card for this battle. The abilities of your sacred source life forms are a secret to us. The other party cannot possibly know. If we shoot down these scouting phase, the other party will definitely send more." According to the information we have, Night-Leaning Moon's disciple, Wuxia, has a source-type life form that can produce many types of insects. Even if I use race judgment, that source-type life form's genes are different from these white moths, so it won't have any effect. Also, I can't use my Great Devil ability as I please. Luo had casually used race judgment before. This was because the ability could not be accumulated. If it could not be used 3 times a year, it would be wasted. It would be refreshed the next year. Thus, Luo had recklessly used it on other creatures in order to experiment with the racial judgment ability, even though he knew that he couldn't use it all up. In the end, Luo discovered that the race judgment ability targeted the soul of the living being of the race. If it was used on a large race, the negative effects of racial judgment would cause Luo to suffer. Luo's soul was damaged. When facing an insect-type carcinoma Fey, Luo would only choose to use it when he knew that it was rare. Luo, Qianyu and the other 4 continued forward. He discovered that the originally intact terrain of the examination grounds had been destroyed. Apart from the tree trunk where the rot-flying locust had been, even the large rocks had been gnawed into pieces by the rot-flying locusts. Not long after, the ground beneath their feet began to echo as they stepped on it. Luo immediately turned around and jumped back. The ground under his feet felt exceptionally solid. Luo said directly to Qianyu, "It seems that black sand-type source-type life form has already spread here." As soon as Luo's voice fell, A quicksand vortex appeared on the land that Luo had just left. At that moment, numerous thin vines grew out of the sea of sand. After these vines grew out, they instantly wrapped around the 5 of them. However, Luo did not dodge the vines. This was because Yanling had already used her sacred source life form and was waving the huge folding fan in her hand that was covered in dark blue seaweed. As she waved the folding fan, the seaweed in her hand rapidly grew. Kai Hui Yanling Yu Chongjian Qian Yu Luo, the phaseless beast, and the 3 sacred source life forms were all fused together. The Cambrian petrified fish that Qian Yu had summoned were all fused together. Next, Yu Chongjian's pig-bodied sacred source life form. The glove totem on his left hand that was wrapped in steel emitted a mournful sound. Kai Hua's human-faced arachnid sacred source life form also had a layer of purplish-red evil light appear on the spider web between its hands. The gluttonous vine's ferocious attacks had clearly landed on each of them. However, the damage seemed to have been completely absorbed by the pig-bodied sacred source life form. The totem on the steel glove on his left hand materialized. In the end, the boar human monster seemed to have reached its limit and exploded into a puddle of blood. At that moment, the sacred source life form with a pig's body and a human's body appeared once again. He also provided a massive amount of life energy to everyone he linked with. The life energy was basically equivalent to the damage suffered by the pig-bodied sacred source life form. Then Kai Hua's human-faced arachnid sacred source life form trembled. The black and red spider silhouettes on his hands quickly crawled towards the gluttonous vine. These spider shadows were aimed at the gluttonous vines that had just attacked them. When the spider shadow landed on these carnivorous vines, a black and red spider mark immediately appeared on the vines. Every time the gluttonous vine struck, a new black and red spider shadow would appear, leaving behind a new mark. When the mark reached the 3rd layer, the inside of the gluttonous vine, it would explode into a cloud of purplish-black poisonous smoke and then quickly wither. After a while, Luo, Qianyu, Yanling, Kaihua, and Yu Chongjian, under the coordination of the 3 sacred source life forms, they only needed to move forward at a moderate pace. Red Thorn's Sea of Flowers and the Source Sand's attack. They would be easily neutralized. As long as Red Thorn used the gluttonous vine to attack, the Sea of Flowers would be completely wiped out by the explosion caused by the black and red spider mark. The Sea of Flowers that Lin Yuan had Red Thorn create was different from the Insect Queen's control of the rotting flying locusts. Lu Jie could not observe the insect swarm through the rotting flying locusts. However, Lin Yuan could understand the situation in the Sea of Flowers through Red Thorn. Lin Yuan's brows furrowed as he sensed everything in the Sea of Flowers. This was because he could not determine what the 3 sacred source life forms' abilities represented just based on his senses. Under normal circumstances, Lin Yuan could only wait for the 5 of them to arrive. He used Morbius True Data to examine the abilities of the 3 sacred source life forms. However, Morbius had told Lin Yuan before. When Morbius was awake, it could use a large amount of spiritual power. Morbius could use True Data on its own. It could be used on one's own phase to investigate from the perspective of one's own fae. Chapter 1743. Thus, Lin Yuan quickly communicated with Morbius. Partner, if you use Red Thorn's vision to examine the sacred source life forms in the Sea of Flowers, how much spiritual power do I need to use? Morbius pondered for a moment before replying. Partner, you might not need to use much spiritual power to examine the sacred source life forms. Partner, don't be fooled by the fact that you don't need to expend a lot of spirit power to examine phase and sacred source life forms. But if you use your contracted phase vision to examine across such a long distance, it will consume a lot of spiritual power. The amount of spiritual power in your body right now is definitely not enough. Perhaps if I use Red Thorn's vision to examine too, your spiritual power will be depleted. If you insist on examining, I suggest you remove the spiritual force imprint. Upon hearing that, Lin Yuan nodded. The spiritual force imprint had always been one of Lin Yuan's trump cards. Under normal circumstances, Lin Yuan would not easily use it. It could be said that this trump card had saved Lin Yuan's life countless times. Just as Lin Yuan decided to remove the spiritual force imprint and let Morbius use True Data to examine the 3 sacred source life forms, the Star Web audience's hearts were in their throats. It could be said that the majority of the Star Web audience had never heard of sacred source life forms before. However, on the general execution stage in the duel between Han Chi and Black For the first time, the Star Web audience knew that sacred source lifeforms were actually so powerful. At the start, Lu Jie and Lin Yuan had set up the array and transformed the entire hill into a sea of sand. Lu Jie had produced tens of thousands of insect swarms. He summoned a few more infamous insect-type carcinoma phase. The Sea of Flowers had also bloomed on the Sea of Sand. Gao Feng, who could support a 1,000-man team, also used his 3-phase. 1 breeze hibiscus and 2 spirit spring lilies helped Lu Jie recover his spiritual power. This allowed Lu Jie to rely on the insect queen to produce even more alien insects. With such skills and the situation, no matter how the Star Web audience looked at it, there was no possibility of losing. Lu Shuang, who had always been rather confident in her strength, looked at Black and Lu Jie's array and gulped. She did not know how to explain it. This was because the setup of this trap was simply too strong. It could definitely be called a textbook for positional warfare. If Lu Shuang brought the exquisite rhinoceros deer and the 2 walking shaman snakes to fight in such a formation, in less than 3 minutes, the Sea of Sand, the Sea of Flowers and the Sea of Insects, it would swallow its own spiritual item until not even bits and dregs were left. While the 5 people on his side were actively making arrangements, the 5 people on the Freedom Federation's side were having an internal conflict. Lu Shuang thought she was going to win. There were also many celebratory voices on the Star Web. Is Lil Song finished today? What's there to fight in this battle? Let's celebrate Lord Lu Yifun's victory in advance. Dawn. What is the quality of the 5 people dispatched by the Freedom Federation diplomatic mission? To be able to have internal strife under such circumstances, it was simply amazing. Don't you know that we're going to fight together later? Dreaming of you, my legs are numb. There's a Sea of Flowers in the Sea of Sand, and a Sea of Insects in the Sea of Flowers. I can't think of any reason to lose this battle. Yuqing, huh? Did you guys notice that the Freedom Envoy called Qian Yu was so afraid of the black-haired youth beside him? What was going on? As the Freedom Envoy, shouldn't Qian Yu be the leader of the team? After looking at the comments in her live-streaming room, Lu Shuang felt that things were not so simple. After all, this duel was proposed by the Freedom Federation. The people of the Freedom Federation wouldn't just let the younger generation die for no reason, right? There was no point in doing so. The Freedom Federation and the Radiance Federation still had a bet at the Myriad Nations Conference in 2 years. When she thought about the bet, Lu Shuang felt that no federation could afford to lose. As expected, things were just as Lu Shuang thought. Facing the swarm of locusts, the 5 members of the Freedom Federation's diplomatic mission responded. From the start, they used an incomprehensible power to get rid of an insect-type carcinoma Fey. Then they faced the attack of the Sea of Flowers and summoned 3 sacred source lifeforms. It was unknown what kind of ability the 3 sacred source lifeforms had used to destroy the Sea of Flowers in an instant. What was the symbol of Black, the rising genius of the Radiance Federation within a year? It was definitely the endless Sea of Flowers. When Black had just become famous, he had saved Millstone Town. The Sea of Flowers was the main character. It could be said that the Sea of Flowers had become Black's undefeatable symbol. And now, Black's undefeatable symbol had been destroyed. The originally relaxed mood of the Star Web viewers immediately sank. Flowing breeze. What's going on? Why is Black Sea of Flowers destroyed? Who can tell me what's going on? Clear. Is this the power that a young spirit chi professional can possess? Even a veteran powerhouse might not be this strong. Gu Qingshan. The opponent is so powerful. Can Lord Lu Yifun, Black and the others resist? At this moment, Lu Shuang could not even utter a word. Lu Shuang had forgotten that she was a Star Web streamer. Lu Shuang only knew to stare at the live stream and pray that her side could win. Everyone knew the consequences of failure. But no one was willing to say it out loud. At that moment, Lu Shuang suddenly realized something. Black, who was wearing a silver mask, suddenly burst out with a massive amount of spirit chi. This spirit chi was so massive that Black's body could not contain it. As an A-rank spirit chi professional, Lu Shuang used her own spiritual power to compare with Black's spiritual power. Lu Shuang felt that her spirit chi was like a ladle of water beside a lake. This spirit chi surprised not only Lu Shuang but also the ordinary viewers in the livestream room. Hui Yao's 13 eminences, Li Su and the Mercy God looked at Lin Yuan in shock. The spirit chi in Lin Yuan's body was already comparable to an S+ rank spirit chi professional. However, when a spirit chi professional reached S rank, the form of their spirit chi would change. A rank spirit chi professionals could condense their spirit chi into a cyclone, and the ability to do so was considered an ordinary way of using spirit chi. However, when an S-rank spirit chi professional became an S-rank spirit chi professional, their spirit chi would turn into a mercury form. This condensed spirit chi would form a barrier on the surface of the spirit chi professional's body, which could withstand extremely powerful attacks. However, Lin Yuan's body did not have these spirit chi changes. Although the amount of spirit chi was astonishing, the use of spirit chi was only at the level of a B-rank spirit chi professional. But even so, just based on the amount of spiritual energy, it was too shocking. Lin Yuan did not think that after he unlocked the spirit chi imprint that he had not unlocked for a long time, there would be such a huge commotion. Indeed, Lin Yuan had stored the spirit chi imprint for a long time. 7017K. Chapter 1744. Blackie, on the other hand, had been upgraded to Diamond X/Fantasy V. The amount of spiritual power stored in the mark every day was astonishing. It was something that Gold Blackie could not compare to in a month. Lu Yifan, Lu Jia Zhongzhe and Gao Feng looked at Lin Yuan in shock. However, Lin Yuan could no longer care so much at that moment. Before the 5 Freedom Federation ambassadors got close, Lin Yuan needed to know the abilities of the 3 sacred source life forms. Only then could he give Gao Feng instructions. He wanted Gao Feng's sacred source life form, the memory-eating music box, to selectively target the sacred source life forms. From there he could try to break the link between the 3 sacred source life forms. Lin Yuan channeled spiritual power into Morbius, which he wore on his wrist. No one noticed that Morbius glowed with a faint copper light under Lin Yuan's sleeve. Immediately after, Lin Yuan received Morbius's feedback. The images and data of the 3 sacred source life forms appeared in Lin Yuan's mind. Lin Yuan was shocked when he saw the data of the 3 sacred source life forms. He immediately understood how the trio's sacred source life forms had caused such damage to Red Thorn's Sea of Flowers. Lin had mentioned this in the information she had given him. The 3 linked sacred source life forms of the Freedom Federation came from Yanling Kaihua and Yu Changjian. Before the team battle, Lin Yuan already knew the names of the 5 Freedom Federation ambassadors. The sacred source life form beside Yanling, which was hidden in a clamshell, was called Gorgon's clam. Sacred source name, Gorgon's clam, sacred source species, source family/sacred source species, sacred source star grade. 4 stars, sacred source type. Water function frowny face seaweed chain flow. Release seaweed to form a chain around a selected target. The target connected to the seaweed can take damage together, and after taking damage, it will recover a certain amount of life force for the unit that has been injured. When using up spirit chi, the recovered life force can be allocated to a specific target. Spirit boil paralysis. Choose an area and paralyze the target with the highest amount of spirit chi. After paralyzing the target will not be able to move. After the target's spirit chi drops, it will choose another target with the highest amount of spirit chi. The one beside Yu Changjian was a sacred source life form with the body of a pig and the body of a human. It had 2 fangs and was called Gorgon's tooth. Sacred source name, Gorgon's tooth, sacred source species, origin family/sacred source species, sacred source star grade. 4 stars, sacred source element. Metal function frowny face body splitting forging. When attacked, the user can absorb the damage from the target that they are connected to and bear all of the damage. When the damage is taken to the limit, the user can shatter their body to block the damage and convert the damage into life force, which is distributed to the target that they are connected to. With the healing from the life force, the shattered body can be restored. Gift of Teeth. Dedicates one source of power to a target, allowing the target to obtain an ability in a short period of time. The creature next to Kaihua had hands full of spider silk. It was the sacred source life form that had destroyed the Sea of Flowers. It was called Gorgon's silk. Sacred source name, Gorgon's silk, sacred source species, origin family/sacred source species, sacred source star grade. 3 stars, sacred source type. Poison function frowny face corrosive goo heart explosion. Every time the user is attacked, a corrosive goo mark will be placed on the target. When the target has 3 layers of corrosive goo marks, the 3 corrosive goo marks will form a corrosive goo mark. The corrosive goo mark will detonate and destroy the target's energy core. Through the names of the three sacred source life forms, Lin Yuan could roughly guess why these three fays could wield their swords in tandem with each other. Although Lin Yuan had also developed in the swamp world, he had never heard of the legend of Gorgon. Li Su had steadily built his base camp in the swamp world. He had yet to explore the swamp world in depth. Firstly, Lin Yuan wanted to develop his own faction in the swamp world. Secondly, Lin Yuan did not have that much time to explore the swamp world. This was because Lin Yuan's focus had always been on the development of the Divine Wood Federation. At that moment he heard Morbius speak. Partner, these three sacred source life forms should be newly formed after the same dimensional life forms transformed into source-type life forms. According to my investigation, the aura of these three sacred source life forms should be related to the Medusa demon in the swamp world. Partner, if you kill these three sacred source life forms, I should be able to use my power of origin to fuse with their bodies. Partner, if you kill these three sacred source life forms, I should be able to use my power of origin to fuse with the bodies of the three source-type life forms. Partner, if you kill these three sacred source life forms, I should be able to use my power of origin to fuse with their bodies. When Lin Yuan heard Morbius' words, he could not help but smile bitterly. According to his observations, Yanling's sacred source life form was the main one among the three sacred source life forms. As for the sacred source life form, the Gorgon muscle's second ability, Spirit Boil Paralysis. It was just right for him who had removed the spirit chi imprint. Once he entered the range of the Gorgon muscle's influence. When the Gorgon muscle used its Spirit Boil Paralysis ability, he would instantly be unable to move. Of course, this was also a solution. If he did not remove the spirit chi imprint, it was impossible for him to find out the true data of these three sacred source life forms. The stars of Yanling, Kaihua, and Yuchangjian's sacred source life forms were not very high. This was normal. Before the Great Night Assembly, Zhongzai's sacred source life form had only been star 3. He had only broken through to star 4 during the Great Night Assembly. Zhongzai was 22 years old this year. Yanling, Kaihua, and Yuchangjian were obviously around 20 years old. It was obvious that they had spent a lot of effort to raise their sacred source life forms to such a level at such a young age. Gao Feng's sacred source life form could reach star 6. This was because His Majesty Cicada Cry had fed his sacred source life form, the intent dispelling wind, to Gao Feng's eating memory 8 music box. For a very long time, His Majesty Cicada Cry's intent dispelling wind could not break through. Take Lin Yuan as an example. His sacred source life form's star had only just broken through to star 4. However, Yanling and Yuchangjian were at the same level. In order to raise Princess's star level, Lin Yuan had spent a lot of effort. According to the sacred source life form's star level, Gao Feng's sacred source life form, the Eating Memory 8 music box. When it used the memory magic scissors and banishing melody, it could control Yanling, Kaihua, and Yuchangjian's sacred source life forms at will. Before knowing the sacred source life form's abilities, this seemed like an unfathomable ability. However, after understanding the sacred source life form's abilities, Lin Yuan immediately found the key to their sacred source life form's abilities. Lin Yuan immediately found the key to linking the sacred source life forms to each other. 7017K. Chapter 1745. Therefore, the combination of the three sacred source life forms. It was all because of Yanling's Gorgon muscle's ability, algae chain flow. Yanling's Gorgon muscle's sacred source life form, algae chain flow. The Gorgon muscle's tooth and Gorgon silk were linked together using algae. The Gorgon muscle's tooth and Gorgon silk's bone-eroding heart could only be used in this way. If it could not be linked to multiple targets, whether it was the Gorgon muscle's tooth's bone-eroding heart or Gorgon silk's bone-eroding heart, none of them could have such a powerful effect. According to true data, the three sacred source life forms abilities were introduced. The Gorgon muscle's tooth's bone-eroding heart ability mainly absorbed damage to itself and targets related to itself. It would bear all of the damage. It was a powerful defensive ability. When one's body was damaged to the limit, one's body would shatter. When the body shattered, all of the damage would be converted into life force. It would be distributed to other targets related to itself. This was the function of the Gorgon muscle algae chain flow. When the linked target was injured, when the linked target was damaged, it could restore the life force of the target. It would also restore the life force of the target by consuming spirit energy. Could be assigned to a specific target. This allowed the life force released when the Gorgon muscle's tooth's body shattered to be transferred to the Gorgon muscle. It allowed the Gorgon muscle's tooth to recover, creating a seemingly invincible effect. The Gorgon silk was a poison-type sacred source life form. Its bone-eroding heart ability was an extremely powerful counterattack ability. Every time it was attacked, it would counterattack the target. It would apply a bone-eroding mark on the target. If the target was attacked 3 times, the Gorgon silk's bone-eroding heart ability could apply 3 layers of bone-eroding marks on the same target. The bone-eroding mark would automatically form a black-red spider-shaped goo worm. The goo worm would automatically find the target's energy core. It would then detonate at the target's energy core. Without the Gorgon muscle's algae chain flow ability, this ability could be easily avoided, as long as it did not attack the Gorgon silk. However, it was precisely because of this link that it could attack any target in the team. It would cause the Gorgon's tooth to place a bone erosion mark on the target. The energy core of Red Thorn's child Ramets was located inside the gluttonous vine, inside a small digestive cavity that could store digestive fluids. After the source sand turned into grains of sand, the entire sea of sand became the source sand's body. The source sand did not have an energy core. Therefore, although he was also marked with the eroding bone mark, he was still able to see through it. However, the sea of flowers created by Red Thorn was heavily damaged, while the source sand was not affected at all. Lin Yuan turned to look at Gao Feng and was about to tell him about the information he had obtained. However, when he thought about the Freedom Federation, there would be 2 majesties watching this battle. He did not want to expose his heaven-defying detection ability. Therefore, Lin Yuan used Genius' exclusive skill, Interconnected Tail. The white cat tail that all the Star Web viewers were looking forward to appeared again. It was just that when the cat's tail appeared this time, it did not launch an attack like when it confronted Han Chi in the previous match. At this time, 4 cattails sprang out from behind Black. The cat's tails were like long ribbons, glowing like colored glass. They were exceptionally beautiful. The 4 cattails shot toward Lu Jie, Zhong Zhe, Lu Yifan and Gao Feng respectively. They linked the 4 of them together. On the Freedom Federation's side, a sacred source life form initiated a link with the team. It was the same for the Radiance Federation's side. However, from the appearance of this link, there was nothing special about it. To put it bluntly, it was just a link, but it was like there was no link at all. There were already high-class creation masters hidden among the Star Web viewers, and they were all guessing the abilities of the 4 cattails. Black had only used its cat's tail 3 times in total. Every time, it was displayed in an astonishing manner under the watchful eyes of tens of thousands of people. But in the end, Black did not summon the fae that possessed the cattails. It was full of mystery. However, no matter what guesses were made, the 4 cattails were simply too calm. But soon, everyone knew from Lu Yifan, Zhong Zhe and Gao Feng's expressions that the cattails were definitely not simple. Lu Jie had already been executed by Genius's interconnected tail. Therefore, Lu Jie was not unfamiliar with the feeling of being connected to Lin Yuan through the cattails. It was as though as long as he had any thoughts, Lin Yuan would be able to instantly receive them. There was no need to speak, and it was the most efficient communication. Zhong Zhe and Gao Feng had never participated in team battles before. They knew that Lin Yuan's ability was very powerful and would be of great help in this battle. However, Lu Yifan, who had been participating in team battles for the past few years, knew how precious Black's ability was. However, he knew how precious this ability of Black's was. It had reached the standard of a strategic level. In Lu Yifan's opinion, with this ability, as long as Black's combat strength was not too inferior to the top young generation, then he would be qualified to be a member of the Radiance Knights. This was because such an ability was simply too important to a team. Even teammates who had been working together for a long time would often make mistakes in coordination when they were unable to effectively communicate with each other during an emergency. The ability that Black displayed completely eliminated the possibility of mistakes. As the Radiance 100 sequence, Black was this batch's strongest dark horse. The battle with the Freedom Federation's Han Chi allowed Black to stand at the peak of the young generation's combat strength. Lu Yifan sighed softly. If there were no accidents, Black would definitely have a place in the next Radiance Envoy. Before Lu Yifan could sigh, he heard Lin Yuan explain the abilities of the 3 sacred source life forms through his thoughts. This caused Lu Yifan, who had seen much of the world, to suddenly open his eyes wide. Black had built a seamless communication bridge for the team through the cat-tailed light belt. Now Black had displayed an unimaginable probing ability. Lu Yifan could not even see Black's shadow from such a distance. However, Black had used some unknown method to even detect the sacred source life form's abilities. In that case, didn't it mean that Black was an extremely powerful creation master? Lu Yifan listened to Black's every word very seriously. He carefully remembered the abilities of the 3 sacred source life forms. The more he listened, the more Lu Yifan was shocked. When the 3 sacred source life forms' abilities were linked together, there was no way to deal with them. Under such a perfect closure of functions, it was very difficult for ordinary methods to achieve anything. 7017K. Chapter 1746. In Lu Yifan's opinion, the easiest way to break it was to continuously counterattack with powerful attacks. Yan Ling wanted the sacred source life form, the Gorgon clam, to use its algae chain flow ability to restore the Gorgon tooth's vitality. Yan Ling herself needed to consume spiritual power. With a burst of powerful attacks, Yan Ling's spiritual power would be instantly depleted. It would allow the subsequent recovery of spiritual power to prevent Yan Ling from using the sacred source life form. If it were the other 4 Radiance envoys, they would probably be able to do it. However, Lu Yifan was a defense-type spirit chi professional. Among the defense-type spirit chi professionals, he was more inclined to support. He would not be able to produce powerful attacks. Previously in the team, every Radiance envoy had their own specialties. Lu Yifan had never felt that a weak attack would be his shortcoming. However, Lu Yifan now realized this point. But by the time he realized this, it was already too late. He could not possibly replace himself and let any other Radiance envoy take the field, right? In the process of thinking, Lu Yifan did think of Zhongzhe, Lu Jie, and Black, who were the main attackers in the team, to launch a series of attacks like that. However, no matter how strong Zhongzhe, Lu Jie, and Black were, they were still B-rank spirit chi professionals. The limit of a phase strength was at most Diamond X/Fantasy V. Even if everyone had the ability to fight beyond their ranks. The battle between Black and Han Chi just now also proved this point. It was possible to deal damage beyond their ranks once. However, it was too difficult to deal dozens of damage beyond their ranks. According to the normal situation, this was the case. A spirit chi professional would need to use the sacred source life form's ability once, which would require about 5% to 8% of the spiritual power in the body. Even if it was 8%, the Gorgon clam's algae chain flow ability could be used 12 times in an instant. Furthermore, the Freedom Federation's other members would definitely not sit idly by while attacking Yan Ling. They could not just watch as the 3 sacred source life forms' linkage was broken. Just when Lu Yifan couldn't think of any good ideas at the moment, Black, who had just explained the 3 sacred source life forms' functions, spoke again. Gao Feng, your sacred source life form can effectively destroy the other party's 3 sacred source life forms. Don't bother about Kai Hu's Gorgon's silk and Yu Changjian's Gorgon's tooth. Let's target Yan Ling's sacred source life form, the clam's first ability, algae chain flow. Given your sacred source life form rank, you can easily seal the Gorge Gong clam's first ability through the memory magic scissors. Sensing Lin Yuan's intent, Gao Feng replied with his intent. No problem. But Black, the spiritual power in your body is the highest here. Gorgon muscle, use its second ability, Spirit Boil Paralysis, and it will immediately immobilize you. Should I use the memory eating music box's memory magic scissors to seal off Spirit Boil Paralysis as well? Lin Yuan pondered for a moment before shaking his head at Gao Feng. You are a sacred source life form, the memory eater music box. You are currently in the growth period and have yet to reach the 7-star adult stage. I can only use the memory magic scissors to make the sacred source life form forget its 2 functions. Freedom Envoy Qian Yu goes without saying. I feel that there's something fishy about that white-haired youth. Every time the memory magic scissors changes targets, it takes about half a minute. It's very difficult to change targets during a battle. Why don't we leave one of the memory magic scissors spots for Qian Yu and that white-haired youth? Then Lin Yuan looked at Zhongzhe. He spoke with his intent. Big brother Zhong, The best way to break out of this situation is to kill Yanling. If we kill Yanling, the linkage will not be able to continue. Actually, there's another way, which is to kill Yu Changjian. Without the Gorgon tooth, the Gorgon silk can still cooperate with the Gorge Gong clam. However, this kind of pure counterattack will not pose much of a threat to us. But according to our side's request, before the others are defeated, we cannot attack Yu Changjian. Therefore we can only target Yanling. When everyone was communicating with their thoughts, the 5 of them were connected to each other. Zhongzhe was not a fool. As a top genius of the Radiant Sect's younger generation, his combat IQ was extremely high. He immediately understood the meaning of Lin Yuan's words. Zhongzhe took a deep breath and replied. Yanling is the core of the 3 of them. She will definitely be heavily protected. Zhongzhe paused for a moment before continuing. Leave Yanling to me. As long as you can help me restrain the 2 of them, I will try to kill Yanling while the 2 of them are protecting her. When Zhongzhe said this, he looked relaxed. But in reality, Zhongzhe had already made up his mind to cut off all means of retreat. The words that Zhongzhe said to Lin Yuan were also meant for the other 3 teammates. To say such a thing at such a time. Zhongzhe was not the only one who wanted to try. Instead, Zhongzhe was using his own life to establish a military order that must be completed. Lin Yuan could hear the determination in Zhongzhe's words. The Gorgon muscle's spirit boil paralysis ability only immobilized his physical body. It did not affect Lin Yuan's ability to summon phase and execute some abilities that did not require him to move. Therefore, even if he was affected by the spirit boil paralysis, it was not completely useless. At that thought, Lin Yuan released Chimey. Chimey was a sound type and light type Fey in the Si Huang's new sun form. However, after transforming into the Brahma bird form, Chimey would turn into a fire-type dual-type Fey. Chimey's Brahma bird form was very compatible with Zhongzhe's ability. Furthermore, the sun in Chimey's body had a strong enhancement ability for fire-type Feys. Chimey could use its exclusive skill, Twin Sun Fetters, to sing to the sun. It could borrow energy from the sun to replenish its body's consumption. This way, Chimey could continuously enhance Zhongzhe's heaven-burning Ho's desolate bloodline Fey. Zhongzhe, Gaofeng, Lu Jia, and Lu Yifan saw an indescribable sparrow appear in front of them. It was a wide tail feather covered with suns like a cattail leaf fan. On the golden tail feather, there were layers of suns, a total of 99. 2 blue tail feathers, which were much longer than the golden tail feathers, were like 2 zither with golden clouds as the strings. The entire bird was golden blue, and the 2 colors perfectly fused together. As the bird flapped its wings and flew, the golden bird circled around the blue-gold bird. Among these birds there were also several phoenixes. It produced a kind of phenomenon of phoenixes looking at sparrows. 7017K. Chapter 1747. Such a phenomenon was too unusual for a phase evolution. It had even subverted most of the spirit chi professionals' understanding. The sparrow phase bloodline belonged to a low-end avian fae. But how did the relatively low-end bloodline evolve to the point where it could suppress the might of the phoenix bloodline? Even the spectators on Star Web were holding their breaths as they paid attention to the match. He was praying for the Radiance Federation's 5 people with solemn expressions. At that moment he couldn't help but be stunned by this bird fae. Mr. Qian, fuck. I finally knew the true identity of the woman who controlled the golden birds that filled the sky during Black's duel. It's a bird. Wind blows. This sparrow phase appearance is too shocking. Was the purple butterfly summoned by Black the legendary blue flash purple butterfly? The blue flash purple butterfly and this bird were on the same level. If you really want to choose, Black's bird fae should be enough to be named the most beautiful bird fae. Muzi loves fish. Ridiculous. It was fine if Black's fae was powerful. And she's so beautiful. Black pill. This blue-gold bird should be the evolved form of the blue bird from Black's previous life, right? Did I see the sparrow voice lowly goddess's true form? Upon seeing Chimey summoned by Black, Bai Hao's heart tightened. He knew that Chimey was going to fight again in this duel. At first, when Bai Hao found out that the sparrow voice lowly goddess was an avian fae, he could not accept it. But now Bai Hao had accepted reality. She treated the sparrow voice lowly goddess, a bird species fae, as the love of her life. After summoning Chimey, he immediately let it transform into the Sanskrit sparrow state. Chimey, which had just entered its body, seemed to be draped with a layer of red cape. At Lin Yuan's command, it landed on Zhong Zai's shoulder. Lin Yuan said to Zhong Zai, "Big brother Zhong Yinan will cooperate with you." After saying that, Lin Yuan turned to look at Lu Yifan and said, "Big brother Lu Yifan, in a while, use your desolate bloodline Fei Sky Peach Azure Bird and use Elite Guard Return. Let the Jingwei spirit release the skill Emperor Yan's will to amplify Zhong Zai. Help Zhong Zai strike that blow." Due to the urgency of the situation, Lu Yifan had only introduced his Desolation Bloodline Phase exclusive skill to everyone, and the abilities of Sacred Source life forms. After the introductions, the duel began. Lu Yifan had a certain understanding of Lin Yuan because he had watched the battle between Lin Yuan and Han Qi. He hadn't expected Gao Feng's Sacred Source life form to be able to solve the problem that had been troubling him. That was great. He did not know what the two functions of Gao Feng's Sacred Source life form, the memory-eating music box, were. However, just the memory-eating music box alone was enough to restrict the other party's Sacred Source life form's abilities, and two at once. This was enough to prove how powerful Gao Feng's Sacred Source life form, the memory-eating music box, was. Lu Yifan had once heard from his master, Ji Chongdeng, that Lord Cicada Cry had called his disciple's Sacred Source life form the strongest support-type Sacred Source life form. From the looks of it, it was indeed a well-deserved reputation. Upon hearing Lin Yuan's words, Lu Yifan nodded. "In a while, when Zhong Zai attacks my Sacred Source life form, the Sky Peach Green Bird will immediately use its Elite Guard Return ability. Let the Elite Guard Soul coordinate with Zhong Zai to attack. Try to get rid of Yan Ling, but among the 5 opponents, which 2 should we help Zhong Zai restrain?" Actually, Lu Yifan had the ability to take on the role of commander in this duel and give out orders. However, because he didn't understand the abilities of other Fei's Sacred Source life forms, Lu Yifan had handed over command to Black Hand. Since he had already handed over command, he was only a member of the team. Lu Yifan would seek Lin Yuan's approval for any action. After all, there should only be one voice in a team. Upon hearing that, Lin Yuan replied without hesitation. Gao Feng suddenly broke the combination of Yan Ling, Kai Hua, and Yu Changjian. The 3 of them should panic for a moment. Without the combination, the 3 of them will be exposed to danger. When Big Brother Zhong attacks Yan Ling, he can first feint an attack on Kai Hua. Since the 3 of them are combining without anyone, the combination will not be complete. Therefore, during the feint, even if Yan Ling is important, she will definitely protect Kai Hua. I have a feeling that there is something special about that white-haired youth. In a while, the 4 of us will restrain the Freedom Envoy Qian Yu and the white-haired youth. Leave the panicking Kai Hua and Yu Changjian to Big Brother Zhong. Yu Changjian's Sacred Source life form, the Gorgon's Tooth, has the second ability, Tooth Gift. It can offer its source of power to a target. It will allow the target to obtain one of its abilities in a short period of time. If Yu Changjian's Sacred Source life form, the Gorgon's Tooth, gives its ability to Yan Ling, she will not die immediately after her body is destroyed. As long as she is healed, she will recover. When that time comes, Big Brother Zhong, use the Sacred Source life form Heaven's Blazing Fire to continuously attack Yan Ling in order to recover. Yan Ling will remove the Gorgon's Tooth Spirit Boil ability. I will use the sword technique that I used against you to follow up. Zhong Zai nodded. It could be said that Lin Yuan's arrangement had given him 3 levels of help. Zhong Zai had given such a military order because he was the only one among the 3 who was most adept at single-target attacks. The Burning Sky Centipede's bloodline transformation might not have reached the Great Desolate Realm, but it had basically reached the limits of the true Desolate Realm. In particular, the Burning Sky Centipede had not only mastered the Red Plum Cloud Flame, but it had also mastered 2 other top-notch strange flames. The Red Plum Cloud Flame and the 2 top-notch strange flames would burst forth with power. After the Burning Sky Centipede's compression and fusion, even a Myth 3 Fey would have to avoid its sharpness. This was the source of Zhong Heng's confidence. As soon as Lin Yuan finished speaking, Lu Jie used his spiritual energy to summon an orange tumor Fey that looked like a sandworm. He summoned an orange-red giant insect-type tumor Fey that looked like a sandworm. This insect-type carcinoma Fey was 5 meters long. Through true data, Lin Yuan learned the name of this tumor Fey, Fire Rock Sandworm. Through true data, Lin Yuan found out the name of this insect species: Carcinoma Fei fire rock sandworm. This kind of large tumor Fei especially liked to hide in the crevices of rocks. In the crevices of rocks, this kind of sandworm would enter a hibernating state. In this hibernating state, this sandworm would release a terrifying heat from its body. With its body as the base, it would form a terrifying active volcano that was connected to the Earth's mantle. Before the fire rock sandworm woke up, the volcano would continuously erupt. 7017 K. Chapter 1748. At that time, a supervolcano suddenly appeared in the extreme north. After erupting continuously for nearly 2 years, the ecology of the extreme north had undergone tremendous changes. It had a great impact on the 3 major cities of the extreme north. At that time, the left minister's Wu Ming personally went to deal with this unnatural phenomenon. He discovered that there were many temperate plants growing on the icy plains of the extreme north. From this, one could see how powerful and terrifying the fire rock sandworms were. The fire rock sandworm was one of the few insect-type carcinoma Feis that didn't rely on splitting to reproduce and could rely on itself to create a huge impact. The flame rock sandworm that Lu Jie was currently in was the one that Zhu Ming had found in the extreme north. However, the pinnacle silver fire rock sandworm in the extreme north had already become diamond/legend. Lu Jie took out this firestone sandworm with the intention of creating an active volcano. Through the fire elemental energy in the volcano, he created a favorable terrain for Zhongzhe and carried out hardcore support. Because this battle was going to take place in reality. Furthermore, it was in the Radiance Federation and Lu Jie did not want to use such an extremely lethal method. This was because these methods would affect the land of radiance. The wasteland's ruin insect soil was very nutritious for insect species phase. However, the dueling grounds with a radius of 10 square kilometers were to be rebuilt. The land that had been infested by the ruin bugs had to be moved away and disposed of. Otherwise, as long as a little bit of this soil was left behind, it would infect other soils. It would also erode other soils. In Lu Jie's heart, using the wasteland ruin insect was already his bottom line. But now Lu Jie knew very well that Zhongzhe's attack would determine the team's success or failure. At the same time, it was also the key to protecting the glory of radiance. Thus, after considering the third point, Lu Jie summoned the insect-type carcinoma Fei, the fire rock sandworm. Lu Jie said to Lin Yuan, "Black, the crater formed by this fire rock sandworm is about 500 square meters. This fiery rock sandworm has been tormented by the insect queen's mental power for a long time. It's already exhausted. As long as it burrows into a crack in the stone, it will fall asleep in less than 10 seconds. Find 2 rocks underground, build a crack and bury the fire rock sandworms inside. Before Zhongzhe makes his move, I'll have the insect queen stop tormenting the fire rock sandworms and urge them to sleep." It could be said that everyone had used their trump cards for Zhongzhe's attack. At this moment, 5 figures appeared in the distant sea of flowers. Lu O, who had short white hair, walked at the front of the group. However, it was different from before. For sharp horns appeared on Lu O's head. Lin Yuan, Lu Yifan, Lu Jie, Zhongzhe and Gao Feng all saw this scene. Lin Yuan, Lu Jie and the others did not have much contact with demons. But Lu Yifan had always been dealing with demons. Especially during the last Myriad States conference when Lu Yifan and the others were substitutes, they had seen the power of the Great Devil. He knew that a member of the Freedom Federation who could fuse with a devil and grow 4 horns on his head must have contracted a great devil. Lu Yifan's expression turned grim. For a B-rank spirit chi professional to possess a great devil, it had to be a Khanate great devil. He was one of the 7 great devils in the Devil Church. The 7 great devils were Khanate great devils, and the great desolate grade bloodline of desolation phase were similar. But compared to a Khanate great devil, the peach sky green bird who had just entered the great desolate realm was still lacking. There was still a certain gap. After all, there was still a long way to go before reaching the peak of the great desolate realm. For the Freedom Federation to send out such a character, it seemed that they had been planning to lure him into their trap from the very beginning and kill him. According to the information given by the Holiness, everyone had set their sights on Qian Yu, Kai Hua Yanling and Yu Changjian. In the end, the white-haired youth, Lu O, was the Freedom Federation's biggest trump card. Fortunately, the Radiance Federation also had a trump card, Black. It could be said that even now Lu Yifan could not see through Black. As the 5 Freedom Federation members advanced, Lin Yuan suddenly found himself unable to move. Lin Yuan immediately knew that Yanling had used the sacred source life form, the Gorgon muscles ability, Spirit Boil Paralysis. In fact, when the 5 Freedom Federation members were destroying the Sea of Flowers, Lin Yuan could feel Red Thorn's anger. Morbius had already found out the abilities of the 3 sacred source life forms. Therefore, Lin Yuan did not let Red Thorn create another Sea of Flowers or use other offensive methods to attack the other party. However, Red Thorn's journey had been smooth sailing. It had never suffered such grievances. If Lin Yuan had not stopped it, the dozens of eyes of Relinquish hidden in the sea of sand would have shot out destructive rays. Lin Yuan did not mention this to Zhongzhe. However, this was also a killer move that Lin Yuan had set up to help Zhongzhe kill Yanling. When Qianyu saw Lu Yifan and Lin Yuan, he quickly walked to the center of the team. He shouted at Lu Yifan. I knew you would choose to fight in a positional battle. However, positional battles are useless against us. Lu Yifan did not waste time with Qianyu. He waved his hand and summoned his gem witch. Seeing that Qianyu was still being stubborn after summoning the gem witch, Lu Yifan did not say anything. Lu Yifan said, We might not know each other very well, but we have fought many times. If it weren't for the 3 people behind you using some unknown method, I'm afraid you wouldn't have been able to make it here even after half an hour. Lu Yifan's words were not meant to insult Qianyu. Qianyu did not have the ability to directly kill the insect-type carcinoma Fei. If not for the other party using some method to kill the parasitic rot-flying locust, the other insect-type carcinoma phase and the insect swarm under the sea of sand that Lu Jie had set up earlier, they would definitely follow. Under such circumstances, Qianyu would not be able to make it here in half an hour. Yanling, Kaihua, and Yu Chongjian had been suppressed by Qianyu along the way. Their dissatisfaction with Qianyu had reached its peak. Lu Yifan's words were equivalent to affirming Yanling, Kaihua, and Yu Chongjian's achievements and contributions to the team. The 3 of them could not help but straighten their backs when they heard Lu Yifan's words. Qianyu's face darkened. In Qianyu's opinion, Lu Yifan's words were equivalent to belittling him. Qianyu said coldly, Since we're already face to face, then whoever has the ability to do so, feel free to use it. Qianyu shouted at the Cambrian Peiyu behind him. Cambrian's descent. In an instant, a huge wave of water elements surged out from the Cambrian fish's body. A sea area opened up around the Cambrian Peiyu. 7017 K. Chapter 1749. The moment Lin Yuan saw Qianyu, his entire body was paralyzed and couldn't move. However, Lin Yuan had already used Morbius True Data. He examined the giant shield-skinned fish behind Qianyu. With one look, Lin Yuan thought to himself, I didn't expect a Fei's ancestral bloodline to be able to do so. When I examined Long Tao's Sea King Chalk Mosasaurus, Long Tao's Fei was crowned with the name White Chalk. Qianyu's Fei was the same, crowning itself with the name Cambrian. When the Cambrian Pegasus used its exclusive skill, Cambrian's Descent, it created an undercurrent in the sea region. The temperature of the water was extremely cold and it emitted a bone-piercing chill. If it wasn't for the insect species tumor Fei controlled by Lu Jie, it would have absorbed all the elemental energy. Apart from the fire elemental energy, it would have absorbed all the elemental energy. The water created by the Cambrian Pegasus would have submerged the entire duel arena. Even so, the seawater still surged toward Lin Yuan, Lu Yifan, Zhongzhe, Gaofeng, Lu Jie and the others. Lin Yuan and the others knew very well that they must not be involved in this water region. Otherwise, the Cambrian Pegasus, which was at the pinnacle of Myth 2, could casually stir the water. The surging water would form a huge pressure that could tear them into pieces. A Fei like this that could create a domain had an offensive ability within the domain. It wasn't something that spirit chi professionals could resist with their physical bodies. Therefore, Lin Yuan channeled a large amount of spiritual power through his feet into the source sand beneath his feet. The source sand, which had dug nearly 1,000 meters underground, instantly formed a sand wall. After the sand wall appeared, chain swords formed by radium-uranium steel emerged from the sand wall. The chain swords formed sturdy steel pillars that served as the best support for the sand wall. It prevented the sand wall from collapsing when it was washed away by the water. After this layer of sand wall appeared, layers of sand walls rapidly surged up from the flat ground. Qian Yu revealed a sneer when he saw the situation. Child's play. Cambrian Pegasus, use Overlord water pressure. Upon hearing Qian Yu's command, the Cambrian Pegasus body suddenly turned purplish-red. An overlord of the Cambrian era, whose aura was enough to intimidate the four seas, filled the entire sea. In the sea, the Cambrian Peiyu that ruled the entire sea took a big breath, and the entire sea instantly shrank by half. Then the Cambrian Peiyu opened its mouth. The water droplet he spat out was like a blue laser, shooting towards the sand wall. Under the impact of this stream of water, Lin Yuan realized something. Cracks appeared on the surface of the radium-uranium steel. Lin Yuan was immediately sure that the Cambrian petrified fish, which was at the peak of Myth 2, had casually executed a skill. He was stronger than Endless Summer, who was at Myth 3. First, it was because Endless Summer was a support-type Fae. Secondly, it must be related to Qian Yu's training of the Cambrian fish. The bloodline of this Cambrian Peiyu was able to revert to its ancestor to such a degree. It was hard to imagine how much resources Qian Yu had invested in this Cambrian Peiyu. He knew that he only needed the Cambrian peatfish to use the Overlord water pressure 2 more times. These chain swords made of radium-uranium steel would break. The entire sand wall would be completely destroyed. However, when facing the series of attacks from the Cambrian Peiyu, Lin Yuan did not wait helplessly for death. When the Cambrian Peiyu used Cambrian's descent, Lu Jie had asked the insect queen to recall the Wasteland Ruin Worm. The Wasteland Ruin Worm was powerful because it could work with other insect-type carcinoma phase. The rotting flying locust that had cooperated with the Wasteland Ruin Worm. He didn't know what method the other party used to kill him. The Wasteland Ruin Worm's hiding spot was not far from the huge fish's body, and it would definitely be affected by the sea. With the Wasteland Ruin Worm dead, the entire spirit guards did not have any left. Unlike the rotting flying locust, the spirit guards still had 2 of them, and it did not matter if they died. In addition, the Wasteland Ruin Worm had created enough wasteland, and it was enough for the insect swarm to use for a period of time. After recalling the Wasteland Ruin Worm, Lu Jie raised his hand and tossed out the insect-type carcinoma Fae that he had used against Long Tao, the floating nether hatworm. The floating nether hatworm's strength was that it could turn water into gelatin through its tentacles and seize control of the water. It could also control the phase in the water. If the floating nether hatworm wanted to show its might, it needed some protection. Before it gave birth to larvae and used its tentacles to create a large amount of mucus. The fragile floating nether hatworm did not have any ability to protect itself. As long as Qian Yu discovered it, he could let the Cambrian Pegasus target it. The floating nether hatworm would become a corpse under the strong current. Therefore, Lu Jie arranged for the floating nether hatworm to hide in the yellow sand. Through his thoughts, he told Lin Yuan his thoughts. Lin Yuan used the yellow sand as a cover to protect the floating nether hatworm. This allowed the floating nether hatworm to produce larvae in the yellow sand that came into contact with the water. A large number of larvae grew tentacles and formed a gelatin that stuck a large area of the yellow sand at the bottom of the water together. Then, using the yellow sand as a cover, the larvae stretched out a large number of tentacles. Soon, the water that the Cambrian Pegasus had opened up became sticky. This water was originally supported by the Cambrian Pegasus body's water elemental energy. The water elemental energy was dozens of times denser than the natural sea. This caused the gelatin on the floating nether hatworm's body to become even stickier. Qian Yu could no longer discover this. However, Qian Yu didn't care at all. Qian Yu recognized that this was an insect-type carcinoma Fae, the floating nether hatworm. If Qian Yu encountered the Diamond X/Legend floating nether hatworm in a vast sea, he would definitely turn around and run. This was because if the Diamond X/Legend floating nether hatworm wanted to, it could turn the entire sea into gelatin and nothing could survive. But in this small area, even the water became gelatin. The Cambrian Pegasus was constantly evolving, and its individual combat ability was extremely strong. Even if it was really entangled by the gelatin, it could easily break free. It just needed to put in a little more effort. The Cambrian Pegasus grade was to suppress the floating nether hatworm. What Qian Yu wanted to do now? He wanted to let the Cambrian Pegasus create the water to break down the sand wall. Let everyone on the other side sink into the water. However, an accident occurred. The sea of flowers that was originally submerged by the sea did not wither. Instead, in the sea of flowers, red flowers that were 2 to 3 meters in diameter bloomed. Those red flowers had strange gill-shaped petals. As the gill-shaped petals opened and closed, strands of gills that were 5 to 6 meters long grew out. They were strange red flowers that looked like jellyfishes. After these ordinary jellyfish-like flowers appeared, they did not immediately attack. Instead, they lined up in a regular pattern in the water as though they were waiting for something. This kind of situation was really too horrifying. 7017K. Chapter 1750. Qian Yu immediately told the Cambrian Pekingese to use its skill water burst. A red flower with digestive juices squeezed out by the water pressure. All of them were pressed to the bottom by a glacier and sealed in ice. However, this was not the end. The digestive juices polluted the entire area. There were simply too many specialized underwater units spawned by red thorn. The digestive fluid in red thorn was extremely toxic and corrosive. It could even corrode gold-grade spirit materials. In addition, the water world dimensional life form's unique decaying characteristics filled the entire water body. The Cambrian Peiyu did not feel anything, but Qian Yu, Kai Hua, Yu Changjian and the others who were in the water were shocked. However, he felt an itch all over his body as if he was being cut by a knife. The sacred source life form, Gorgon's tooth, suffered the same damage. He continued to split his body and reforge it. Yu Changjian sensed that the spiritual power in his body had already been depleted by half. He looked at Qian Yu and made 2 hand gestures to him. Qian Yu's face immediately revealed an unwilling expression. He could only ask the Cambrian Peiyu to cancel the Cambrian descent. But before that, Qian Yu made up his mind. He said coldly, Cambrian Peatfish use exclusive skill Cambrian Tide. And the skill Fish King Tail. After receiving Qian Yu's instructions, the Cambrian Petrified Fish used its exclusive skill Cambrian Tide. The sand wall on Lin Yuan's side seemed to have become the coast. Tiny waves rose from the bottom of the sea. The floating nether hatworm had painstakingly formed a zone of gel, and it also became a part of the waves. The waves were like hammers, and with just a few hits, they shattered the chainsword that was made of radium and uranium steel. It rushed toward Lin Yuan. It was as though the sea was about to devour Lin Yuan, Lu Yifan, Zhongzhe, Lu Jia and Gao Feng. As for the Cambrian Peatfish's attack, the 5 of them had already thought of a countermeasure. Lu Yifan planned to use the small peach sky bluebird he had formed on the others to defend themselves. It was true that Qian Yu excelled in offense, but his defensive ability was not inferior to Qian Yu's offensive ability. However, the moment this body of water touched Lin Yuan's body, a huge blue lotus leaf appeared under Lin Yuan's feet. This lotus leaf seemed to have become the source of all water. It absorbed all the waves that had the intention to attack Lin Yuan. During the absorption process, 2 types of flower buds grew on the blue lotus leaf. The smaller one bloomed leisurely. The aura contained within a blue lotus flower. The Cambrian Peiyu was stunned. The gigantic blue flower bud showed no signs of blooming. It was as if he had not absorbed enough water elemental energy. The change in Lin Yuan's feet didn't just shock his teammates. Even Lin Yuan was astonished. Qian Yu and the rest, including Lu O, wore expressions of disbelief on their faces. He didn't understand what was going on. After all, no matter how much of a genius Qian Yu and Lu O were, they were the Radiance Federation's top young generation. The 2 of them simply did not have the qualifications to come into contact with the blessings of the favored spirit. However, Qian Yu, Lu O, and the others had no idea what was going on. However, Li Su and Goddess Lian, as the 2 lords of the Freedom Federation, understood the situation. Li Su looked at the Radiance Federation's His Holiness and spoke. To use such a method in a duel like this, it seems like cheating. Old Man Spacetime had been unhappy with Li Su for a long time. In his early years, he and Li Su had formed quite a grudge. One of Li Su's subordinates, who had followed the Spacetime Elder for decades, was killed by Li Su during a robbery of public resources. The Spacetime Elder said coldly, "You don't have any eye problems, do you? I can see that this is the blessing of the favored spirit. To be blessed by the favored spirit is Black's own ability. If you are capable, the Freedom Federation's people can also get the favored spirit's blessing. Even if it is the real Myriad States Convention, even if one has the blessing of all the favored spirits, there is no suspicion of cheating. This is Black's own ability." When Li Su heard Elder Time's words, he snorted. He knew that Qianyu had kicked an iron plate. Qianyu's talent was power offense type Fey affinity. Among spirit chi professionals, it was an extremely powerful talent that could contract any power offense type Fey. But for some reason, after nurturing Qianyu, the goddess Lian only allowed him to contract water type source type life forms. This made Qianyu very simple in terms of combat. In the face of Black, who had been blessed by the favored spirit, water type attacks below the creation breed level had no effect at all. Moreover, this blessing's protection had a certain range. As long as Black stood with the other 4 teammates, the other 4 teammates could also be indirectly protected. After the hostile water elements completely disappeared, the huge blue lotus leaves and flower buds under his feet all disappeared. Lin Yuan had really forgotten about the blessing that the blue lotus had given him. In a while he would face any water-type attack from the opponent. He could rely on this blue lotus blessing to deal with it perfectly. Seeing that Yu Changjian kept urging him, Qianyu finally let the Cambrian peatfish withdraw from the entire sea area. Otherwise, Qianyu really wanted to let the Cambrian peatfish attack Black a few more times to study what kind of method Black had used. Could actually target him like this. After checking the Cambrian peatfish behind Qianyu, Lin Yuan's gaze fell on Lu O. Previously, Lu Yifan had communicated with the other 4 through his thoughts. Lu O carried a great devil with him, for long horns grew out of his head. These 4 long horns were evidence that Lu O had contracted a big devil. What puzzled Lin Yuan the most was why there was an identical version of himself next to Lu O. Lin Yuan immediately used Morbius True Data out of curiosity. He checked the other version of himself next to Lu O. However, when he used Morbius True Data to examine his doppelganger next to Lu O, he could not help but feel a chill run down his spine. Lin Yuan's eyes suddenly widened. His eyes were filled with an incredulous expression. Lin Yuan could feel that Lu O was a B-rank spirit chi professional. According to common sense, the limit of Lu O's contracted phase was Diamond X/Fantasy V. It was impossible for Lu O to have a myth breed Fey. However, why did Lu O's Fey exceed the limit of a spirit chi professional's role grade? Moreover, this Fey's ability and exclusive skill were too special. In Lin Yuan's opinion, this Fey's ability and exclusive skill were completely beyond the scope of ordinary Feys. If he had to compare only Chimey, a Fey that gave birth to a son through its own bloodline, and Genius, a Fey that could connect to heaven on its own. Only Feys that used their spiritual energy as the price to explore the path of a Class 5 creation master could be compared to it. With this Fey, this battle was probably not going to be easy. Lin Yuan couldn't care so much anymore. He immediately shared the Fey's ability and exclusive skill with his other 4 teammates. 7017K. Chapter 1751. Fey Name. World Calamity Faceless Beast Fey Species. Faceless Beast/Hairy Beast Fey Grade. Suzerain 10 out of 10. Fey Type. Curse Spiritual Soul Fey Quality. Myth I abilities Frowny Face Mother-Child Twin Body Subbody. As a subbody it can store a portion of its energy in the mother's body. Through the mother's existence it can replenish its own energy. Curse Words. Curses the target through words and determines the degree of the curse based on the target's mental strength. Curse Heart. Curse the target in the heart and the curse's effect will be doubled. During the curse, it will corrode the target's soul. Heart Seizing Soul. When the target's soul is completely cursed through Curse Heart, it can enter the target's body and let its soul control the target's body to control the target. Curse Mark Deepening. Deepen the target's own curse effect and bewitch the target's mind, soul, and spiritual energy to a certain extent. Nation Destiny Steal. On a piece of land, if it can trigger the nation's destiny in the land, it can steal the nation's destiny for its own. Stealing the nation's destiny requires burning one's lifespan as the price. Matriarch's Protection. As a child, when you actively use this skill, you can obtain the buff of the mother's mind, spirit, and soul. When you burn your own bloodline, as long as the mother is willing, you can summon the mother over. Exclusive skill Frowny Face Faceless Face. Designate a target and absorb the target's blood, spiritual energy, and soul. It can change into the target's appearance and obtain all the target's abilities. Calamity Luck. Absorb the luck of the land and use it to enhance the effect of one's ability. Lifespan Offset. Determine one's own lifespan and use it to spy on other targets' lifespan. When sacrificing one's own lifespan, touch the target and take away the corresponding lifespan of the target. Understanding the World Calamity Faceless Beast's ability and exclusive skill. Lu Yifan, Zhongzhe, Gaofeng and Lu Jia. Just like when he first saw the World Calamity Faceless Beast's true data, they were all stunned. They didn't expect there to be such a fae in this world. At the same time, Lu Yifan was very surprised. He didn't know what method Black had used to see a myth-breed phase ability and exclusive data at a glance. There were currently no creation masters among the 5 Radiance envoys. Lu Yifan wasn't clear about the abilities of creation masters. But no matter what, even a Class 4 creation master wouldn't be able to see through a myth-breed phase abilities and exclusive skill, right? Zhongzhe, Lu Jia and Gaofeng fared better than Lu Yifan. Lin Yuan was the champion of the Nyx Assembly's civil and martial arena. When Zhongzhe used his trump card at the Great Knight Assembly, Zhongzhe's face changed. He was already at the standard of a primary Class 4 creation master. However, he had lost to Lin Yuan back then. There was a difference of nearly 10 minutes between them. This made Zhongzhe know that Lin Yuan's creation master standard was definitely far superior to his. Right now, Zhongzhe could only see that the other him beside Luo was a fae. However, he wasn't able to see any useful information at the first moment. In order to see through a myth-breed phase abilities and exclusive skill, Lin Yuan was probably a pinnacle Class 4 creation master. After a short moment of surprise, Lu Yifan, Zhongzhe and the others had serious expressions. Putting everything else aside, Luo's World Calamity Beast's ability, Nation Luck Steal and exclusive skill Disaster Luck. All of them would affect Hui Yao's providence. Therefore, no matter what, they couldn't let the World Calamity Beast use this ability and exclusive skill. Therefore, they had to end the battle quickly. Lin Yuan had seen true data and already knew that the World Calamity Beast was Luo's fae. Why was Luo, a B-rank spirit chi professional, able to raise the World Calamity Beast's grade to Suzerain X Mythi? That was because this faceless beast that brought calamity to the world was a child. It had passed the normal ability child mother twin body. By storing energy in the mother's body, it had further broken its own limits. The World Calamity Beast's curse words and curse heart were both curse effects. One was a spirit-type curse while the other was a charm-type curse. Of the 2 types of curses, one targeted spiritual power, and the other targeted the opponent's soul. 4 spirit chi professionals below B rank, even if they had the means to defend against spiritual energy, they wouldn't be able to do so. However, the protection against the soul had always been a weakness. If the myth-breed World Calamity Beast used Curse Heart on anyone on his side, even if it was Lu Yifan, it might succeed. Lin Yuan had always been confident when the target's attack targeted the soul. However, he wasn't sure if he could use Morbius Calm Heart to block the World Calamity Beast's erosion of his soul power through Curse Heart. Curse-type phase were very rare. This World Calamity Beast was a Curse-type, Spirit-type and Soul-type fae. It could be said that it was Lin Yuan's first time encountering a Curse-type fae. The World Calamity Beast Queen's fae belonged to the Phaseless Beast family. This meant that the World Calamity Beast was the same as Genius Chimey. It was a fae that had taken a path that others hadn't taken. As for the World Calamity Beast's platinum ability, Seize the Soul, it was a further enhancement of Curse Heart. While cursing the target's soul, it could control the target and turn it into its puppet. Curse Deepening could deepen the curse effect that the target had to endure. It could also capture the target's mind, soul and spiritual energy to a certain extent. It was an enhancement of the World Calamity Beast's curse ability. It allowed curse words and curse heart to take effect faster. The World Calamity Beast's suzerain ability, Broodmother's Protection, was a kind of reverse summoning ability. It could obtain the Broodmother's spiritual power, soul and spiritual energy enhancement. It could also summon the Broodmother by burning its bloodline. Lin Yuan didn't know how strong the World Calamity Beast's Broodmother was. However, one thing was certain. The World Calamity Beast's Broodmother was definitely stronger than the Broodmother. He had to pay attention to this ability. The World Calamity Beast's exclusive skill, Faceless Face. It was the reason why the World Calamity Beast could transform into Luo's appearance. At that moment, the World Calamity Beast had obtained all of Luo's strength. The exclusive skill, Disaster Luck and Nation Luck Steal. These two abilities were very similar to Chimey producing a sun in its body and Genius using its tail to connect to the heavens. They were abilities that ordinary Fays couldn't possess. The final exclusive skill, calculate lifespan offset. It was the same as using its own lifespan as the price to kill the target. 7017K. Chapter 1752. Morbius might be able to see a Fay's abilities and true data, but it couldn't see a Fay's lifespan. Thus, Lin Yuan wasn't sure how long the World Calamity Phaseless Beast's lifespan was. If the World Calamity Phaseless Beast's lifespan was short, the exclusive skill would cancel it out, and it wouldn't have any practical effect. However, if the Faceless Calamity Beast's lifespan was very long, then the exclusive skill lifespan count offset would allow the Faceless Calamity Beast to have the ability to skip ranks and kill pinnacle experts in the world. For example, his master, the Moon Empress, was only left with 4 years of lifespan. If the Faceless Beast could use its exclusive skill, calculate lifespan to counteract its attack on the Moon Empress, then the Faceless Beast would be able to attack the Moon Empress. The World Calamity Faceless Beast only needed to consume 4 years of its lifespan to drag the Moon Empress to her death. Of course, when facing a peak expert of the world, it wouldn't be easy for the Faceless Beast to use its exclusive skill, calculate lifespan. After all, to use an exclusive skill lifespan calculation offset, he needed to make contact with the target. It was simply too difficult to come into contact with the body of a contemporary powerhouse. As long as the Moon Empress didn't want anyone to get close to her, unless the opponent was stronger than the Moon Empress. Otherwise, there was no way to get close to the Moon Empress. However, the World Calamity Faceless Beast's faceless appearance could deceive its target. As long as that expert wasn't a creation master, the World Calamity Faceless Beast could become the closest person to that expert. Deceive the target's trust. Once he got close, he would kill his target. Lin Yuan and the others had been scheming against Yan Ling. However, how could Luo not think of scheming against Lin Yuan and the others? Originally, Luo's target was Lu Yifan. At the thought of Lu Yifan possessing a Myth 2 Fei, the Freedom Federation had gathered information on him. Lu Yifan's Fei, the Yinyang Tuyang Bulls, had a soul defense effect. Therefore, to be on the safe side, Luo gave up on having the Faceless Beast target Lu Yifan. He made his choice between Lu Jie, Zhong Zhe and Lin Yuan. As for Gao Feng, he was a pure support. The Faceless Beast that controlled Gao Feng was not very useful. Secondly, due to the restrictions set by the Radiance clan previously, they were unable to attack Gao Feng before the other 4 members fell. Finally, after some consideration, Luo fixed her gaze on Lin Yuan. Zhong Zhe himself was cursed, so there was nothing to fear. Up until now, the Freedom Federation had yet to obtain the method to break the curse of misfortune. Therefore, Luo did not think that the Radiance Federation would have any good solution to the curse. In the end, the Freedom Federation had always had more Creation Master resources than the Radiance Federation. Moreover, the Freedom Federation had already possessed an expert capable of purifying the Eternal Heart 5 years ago. Otherwise, the Freedom Federation wouldn't have placed a Class 5 Creation Master's path aside and not used it. Lu Jie's ability to control the insect-type carcinoma Fei for combat was worthy of attention. However, the competition venue was too small, and the insect-type carcinoma Fei would not be of much use. He was already standing in front of Lu Jie. If Lu Jie summoned the weak insect-type carcinoma Feis, it would be no different from personally killing them. Thus, Luo chose Black, the opponent who had displayed his all-round talent in the battle against Han Qi. Luo did not know that his Faceless Beast's data had already been clearly understood by the Radiance's side. Yan Ling used the Gorgon Muscle's spirit-boiling paralysis ability. Black, who had an astonishing amount of spiritual energy in its body, was paralyzed and could not move at all. This was a good time to target Black. Luo immediately gave an order to the Faceless Beast. He ordered the Faceless Beast to deepen its incantation ability on Lin Yuan. Next, it would be Malicious Words and Malicious Heart. After 3 sets of abilities were used, Lin Yuan's eyes immediately turned sluggish. It was as though something had drilled into his heart and brain. It was bewitching and invading his mind, spirit, and soul. Under such corrosion, Lin Yuan no longer had the ability to take the initiative to execute Morbius' Calm Heart ability. Morbius was already awake and it executed Calm Heart 3 times on Lin Yuan. After Lin Yuan was controlled, Lu Yifan, Lu Jia, Zhongzhe, Gaofeng and the others were alarmed. However, they knew that this wasn't the time to be loyal. Lu Yifan yelled out, "Zhongzhe, act according to the plan. Leave black to me." After speaking, Lu Yifan summoned his main phase, the Yinyang dual bull and the 4 symbols 8 trigrams goat. After these 2 pinnacle myth 2 phase appeared. They executed their abilities on Lin Yuan to defend his mind and soul. As for the spirit, the Yinyang dual bull and the 4 symbols 8 trigrams goat didn't have the ability to defend against the spirit. Lin Yuan could only deal with all of this by himself. Upon hearing Lu Yifan's instructions, Zhongzhe immediately summoned his sacred source life form, the heaven's scarlet fire, as well as his main fei, the burning sky roar. Zhongzhe's reincarnation flame beast and the fairy source type life form, the blue venom flame puppet. Their strength had increased compared to when they had fought Lin Yuan. However, Zhongzhe didn't summon them. First, it was because Zhongzhe was going to carry out a series of surprise attacks. It would take too much time to summon too many feis and create a huge scene. It would be easy for the other party to defend. Second, Zhongzhe planned to pour all of his spiritual power into the burning sky roar. He would let the burning sky roar and the heaven's scarlet fire work together to execute his strongest attack. Qianyu was pinned down by Lin Yuan. Lu Jia was now commanding the insect swarm hidden under the sand to attack Qianyu. They did their best to hinder Qianyu's footsteps. Lu O was facing Lin Yuan, who was in a deadlock with the phaseless beast. It was the best time for him to attack. No matter how worried Zhongzhe was, he knew what his current responsibility was. What he should do was the best choice. The burning sky roar had originally been an orange-red creature that looked like a rabbit. However, the burning sky roar had grown much larger. It was no longer suitable for standing on Zhongzhe's shoulder. The burning sky roar's body burned with a magnificent crystal-like flame. This kind of solid flame seemed to be able to burn a hole in the sky if a wisp of it was released into the sky. This flame was even brighter than the one on the burning sky roar's body. It appeared in Zhongzhe's palm. Zhongzhe threw the 5-star sacred source life form, the heaven's scarlet fire, into the sky. He immediately used the heaven's scarlet fire's ability. Scarlet Flame Heavenly Country. Previously, when he had fought Lin Yuan, when Zhongzhe used the heaven's scarlet flame Heavenly Country, he could only summon 21 scarlet flame angels armed with weapons. But now the scarlet flame Heavenly Country had changed greatly. The original scarlet flame Heavenly Country was a circular door. The crimson flaming angel had emerged from the circular door. At that moment, the circular door in the sky suddenly cracked. Within the cracked door, a heavenly country formed by flames appeared in the sky. 7017K. You're tuning in to the Zhou Xian's Legacy YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.